Foods. The Ball legacy lives on. Ball Foods and the Kansas City ESPYs, two great community sponsors.
Twin Peaks is the best in the game. Here, it's bigger game days and bolder fight nights. I mean, where else can you find a scratch kitchen that always comes in clutch? Every day, from lunch to late night. Only at Twin Peaks, the #1 sports bar.
When it comes to your retirement and investment planning needs, call Jeb Graham, Eric Wymore, Ethan Hutchison, and the rest of the Metcalf Partners team. Get started today. Go to metcalfpartners.com or call 9.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's go. We ain't got no time to waste. Let's go. You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Brought to you by Guaranteed Foods, official sponsor of Family Mealtime. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
Hey, indeed, it is the zone here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I'm Joshua Briscoe, the Drake on the other side of the glass. No Jason Anderson today. He'll be back tomorrow. If you need a 4-hour vacation from the zone, I guess I understand, but I'd much rather you stick around with us because we've got a lot of fun stuff to cover here today. We're going to go mostly football, in part because I don't have any analysis for, well, I guess just don't hit a baseball into the outlight. That's never analysis I've had to give before. It's all I have for the Royals today is, I guess don't lose balls in the light above you or in the light in the green monster. It's sort of the beginning and end of my baseball analysis for you today. Pending anything else wild happening, I suppose. But there's a lot going on around the Chiefs right now, and I say that nearly tongue-in-cheek because the most newsworthy things happening for the Chiefs right now aren't happening. There's a day off today in St. Joe, so no practice, no pressers today. We'll talk to Kent Swanson of KC Sports Network at 11. We're going deep as we're here. It's game week. I mean, it's preseason game, but there is a game coming on Sunday, which is really exciting. And then Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated, he'll join us at noon. Todd Lebo will come hang out with us at 1. No sports or leisure today, just on account of, the moving parts and all. We didn't get to talk to Lebo on Tuesday because of practice times and all that. So we'll get our time with Lebo this week and do a whole bunch of Chiefs talk throughout the 4 hours here today. But I, at one point, thought, what would be a really nice time to get a contract extension done? Nice little off day. Hey, Chris Jones, no reason to pay a $50,000 fine when you're not even missing practice. You're just missing the dorm. Could this have been a time and could this have been a day where eventually I have the pleasure of looking at Twitter and saying, breaking news from somebody, Chris Jones and the Chiefs agree to a long-term blah, 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 blah. I didn't even finish that sentence yet because I don't want to have anyone turning on the radio and hearing me announce a fake contract extension that gives you hope that I then have to take away from you. there is no real news. We have gotten a little more as this week has gone on, and Brett Veach has talked a little bit to some of Kansas City's most intrepid reporters. We talked to Adam Teicher about that, what his view of it was back on Tuesday. We'll talk to Matt Derrick on Friday, and again, kind of working through the list. You've heard Jesse Newell here on 810, and the range of comments that have come out of training camp via Brett Veach have filled out this conversation a little bit more. But then early this morning, late last night, I saw it this morning, Nate Taylor of The Athletic puts out his story about Chris Jones with a couple of blurbs that did move the needle for me here. And I think there's some recalibrating to do. And then I know I understand if a lot of people are more or less sick and tired of hypothetical contract extension talk. But this is really important, and it has layers. And frankly, this might be the most important contract negotiation, and certainly the most contentious one of the Patrick Mahomes era, ultimately, and we'll see how far that goes. But Travis Kelce's not going to have a knockdown, drag-out contract extension to finish his career in Kansas City. They'll figure it out. Patrick Mahomes, I don't think, is going to throw his weight around in some contentious contract discussion that ends up making his future ever really uncertain. And maybe Tyreek Hill would be the other answer, where you say, hey, they had a guy on a Hall of Fame track who they traded away and then won the Super Bowl the next year. But Chris Jones is by and large in a class by himself, which makes this both easier and more complicated. Here's how the lead opens in Nate Taylor's story in The Athletic. At this point, no one in the Kansas City Chiefs organization expects him to arrive here at Missouri Western State before the end of training camp. Good lead. Strong lead. However, the next question is becoming more interesting. When will Chris Jones, the Chiefs' superstar defensive tackle, rejoin his teammates? When the Chiefs have their final camp practice set for August 17th, Jones, who's holding out for the first time in his 8-year career, will have accrued a fine of $1.4 million for the days he's been away from the team. If Jones's absence continues after camp, he will continue to face a mandatory $50,000 fine each day based on the new collective bargaining agreement. That's most of the heavy lifting here. Later, same story. Jones and the team are at a stalemate as Jones seeks an extension that would pay him an average annual salary of $30 million. Now, even with that being said, I don't know for a fact that that's the sticking point, but it's certainly a sticking point. And I feel like we've got to recalibrate some expectations now. Not because it's shocking that he wants $30 million. That's where they should be aiming. But it doesn't take 3 months to say, I want 30. You want to give us 26. 28's in the middle. Kumbaya. And if you would have asked me right around the draft or early before it, anytime after the Super Bowl, frankly, anytime after the Super Bowl and up through some of the off-season activities where we realized Chris Jones wasn't showing up, I would have said that that's how it was going to go. I want 30. We want to give you 24. 26. We'll settle it 27, 28. I don't know if it was, ever going to be that simple to meet in the middle. And we're still talking about average annual value, not the other category of this that I still think is very important in terms of the guaranteed money. But I cannot help but to ask now, who feels like the other side is being unreasonable? And if that is both sides, is it time to start getting to the bargaining stage of grief? Well, at least we'll get probably one more year of Chris Jones here, and then I guess they could tag him and trade him next year, and that would at least play out this season. I have found myself talking to myself that way. over these last couple of days. I don't necessarily think that's still the landing spot, but I've caught myself preparing for that potential future. When Aaron Donald signed this massive deal with the Rams, which, as we've talked about, also in part was so he just wouldn't retire and walk away from football altogether, and Aaron Donald, who has as strong of an argument as the greatest football player ever to live as just about anybody, pretty strong argument for the best defensive player and certainly the best defensive player of the modern era. You can kind of draw your little distinctions where you want, but Aaron Donald was a world wrecker for many, many, many years. And so at age 31, he signs a 3-year, $95 million deal that's all practically guaranteed. 46.5 of it's guaranteed at signing. Quinnen Williams, at age 25, signs the 4-year deal, $96 million, so 24 average annual value. 66 of it is practically guaranteed. Almost 48 of it is guaranteed at signing, but 66 million practically guaranteed for Quinnen Williams. Chris Jones's last deal with the Chiefs practically guaranteed him 60. This will be the deal that takes him into his 30s. This is the type of deal that the Chiefs do not hand out anymore. Capitulating to the down-to-the-wire and perhaps at this point kind of unpleasant negotiations is not something the Chiefs have done under Brett Veach. But I don't think that's a conversation ender here. Because for all of the tension and for all of the feelings of, like we talked about yesterday, you know, when you have to say, as Veach did, that you get to a point where everyone wants to take a step back and then conversations heat back up again. And so that's why they're still optimistic, despite the fact that we're more than halfway through training camp. And that Nate's story here says no one with the Chiefs expects to see Chris Jones in St. Joe this year. The vibes are bad. The tension is bad. They must still be far apart enough on August 10th. Happy 8/10, everybody. How are you going to celebrate your 8/10 today? Hopefully with us. But if everything is tense and ugly and the conversations are cold and they're not inching closer to some agreements in some places where they can give a little, take a little, give a little, take a little. The interesting thing about Chris Jones is that all of those frustrations, concerns, bad vibes, none of them decide the future of this negotiation. Like, nothing has been decided by default, which is often not the case when you draw that line in the sand. I think about the way things ended in Kansas City for Tyrann Mathieu. And not that these are terribly comparable situations for a lot of reasons, but seeing how it played out, I still think can be informative. We heard Tyrann Mathieu talk about this in his offseason after his last season with the Chiefs. I think it was before he actually signed with the Saints, if memory serves. And he talked about the realization that when he did not get a contract extension before his lame duck year, for lack of a better term, he knew, I'm not only am I not going to be with the Chiefs again, not only is this my last year to go with them, and that got in his head, affected his play, was a negative force for him. But not only was it the realization that this is all coming to an end and negatively impacting his season, for him it was also, I'm going to have to move again. I am a great player who is, all decade team sort of material, and I am going to ultimately be a journeyman who never spends more than one contract in one place. Arizona to Houston to Kansas City to New Orleans. I mean, Tyrann Mathieu is going to have like a legit Hall of Fame debate to make. And while never spending more time on one team than he did in his rookie contract in Arizona, right? But anyway, where this differs from Chris Jones is a couple of important places. One is that Tyrann Mathieu was an important player and an excellent player earlier on with the Chiefs. But that last year, it was evident, completely evident, that not extending him before that last season in Kansas City was a good thing. You let Tyrann Mathieu walk, you replace him with Justin Reed, you draft Brian Cook, who ultimately steps in when you let Juan Thornhill walk. Keeping that churn going as especially a defensive roster when you have Patrick Mahomes on the offensive side. But keeping your defense young and talented, but responsible in terms of the contracts you give out, I think is a great strategy that the Chiefs have been very good at implementing. And then, it's a way different conversation on the offensive side, but they drew a line on Orlando Brown, and they eventually said, all right, we're going to take the tag from you, and you just walk. We'll figure something else out. But Chris Jones isn't copy and paste Tyrann Mathieu, copy and paste Orlando Brown, copy and paste these other players that have gone through a similar process with the Chiefs. Tyreek Hill even. This part might be redundant. Maybe we've said this 100 times, and so you already know what I'm about to say. But Tyreek Hill for the Chiefs was expendable because of who the quarterback is and what that means for the offense, even when it doesn't have Tyreek Hill. There is no equivalent for the defense, and the closest thing to an equivalent is Chris Jones. If Chris Jones isn't out there against the Lions, and this starting defensive line is Mike Dana, Tershawn Wharton, still fresh off an ACL rehab, Derek Nottie and George Karlaftis, with Felix Anudike-Uzomah and Malik Herring rotating in at edge, and Keandre Coburn and Daniel Wise rotating in on the interior, with Amenahue suspended and with Chris Jones, in this case, just holding out still, maybe missing game checks. I think that's unlikely, but follow me into that world where the Chiefs do not have Chris Jones for any stretch of time, and it falls apart. It just crumbles. I think the secondary is really good. I think it's amazing that they have an entire cornerback group fully filled out by guys on their rookie contracts. That's incredible. What a value. What a way to cheat the league. It's incredible. Justin Reed and Brian Cook, love them. Think the depth they've built out behind them by having some veterans who have been there for a little bit also kind of helps set your floor. I think they might have the best linebacker group in football. It's not the most valuable position group, but they might have the best one. And with all due respect to the players who I mentioned on a defensive line without Chris Jones, that is an apocalyptic problem for the Chiefs defense. There was a great chart that I think Seth Walder tweeted out a while back, and I retweeted it again over the weekend, or maybe earlier this week, because it was during the NFL Top 100 where Chris Jones ends up at number 10, Mahomes is number 1, Kelsey's number 5. These aren't important. I don't, Creed Humphrey wasn't in the top 100, so take all of it with a grain of salt as you wish. But that's what had me looking for it again. And in this Seth Walder graphic, the Patrick Mahomes advanced analytic sort of graphics that always have him in the top right corner, usually by himself, because the X and Y axis is usually good farther to the right, good further up. So the top right corner is where the elite players are. Seth Walder had this one from last season for defensive tackles who qualify, which is a lot of them. It gives you the double team rate for defensive tackles, and it gives you the pass rush win rate at defensive tackle for the 2022 NFL season. And Chris Jones is alone in the top right corner. He is double teamed more than any other qualifying defensive tackle on this list. He is winning at a higher rate than any defensive tackle on this list. He is demanding the focus of the offense and winning anyway. Just as a an alternative example here. Vita Vea, the monstrous defensive tackle for the Buccaneers, he got double teamed maybe fifth most or so last year. I don't have like the chart. I just have the graph here. But Vita Vea was getting double teamed amongst the most in football. But he was below the average here in pass rush win rate by a nice little margin. I mean, he was a below average winner, but a way above average double team recipient. You have guys in that top corner. Tell me if these names sound familiar. The next most impressive data point, significantly less impressive than Chris Jones's, is Dexter Lawrence. Another one removed, Quinnen Williams. One a little less, but double teamed a little more, Jonathan Allen. Right there with them, Grady Jarrett. These are guys who either just got paid or who have gotten paid. This is the metric of the best of the best. Aaron Donald didn't have enough snaps last year to qualify for this one, so I don't know where he would have plotted in there. But Chris Jones last year blew away the best of the rest of the defensive tackles in the sport. So here's another big question that we've asked on this show that I'm asking again today. What happens if the Chiefs do break their rules and at some point they decide, okay, all right, you have completely planted your flag right here. It is going to hurt. We don't like what this looks like in your age 33 season. But here's our best offer. You are winning from us here. We are overpaying because we need you. So what if the Chiefs say that? Well, on one hand, you could say that sets a bad precedent because now you have lined up a future in which, hey, not getting paid what you want from the Chiefs, a holdout, be a problem, don't show up for training camp, and before week one, they'll say, hope you enjoyed your vacation. It was expensive, cost you $1.4 million or so, but I hope you enjoyed your little vacay, staying out of St. Joe, but here's an enormous Brinks truck full of money. You could say, all right, well, then that's setting a bad example because now that's the playbook for how to get one over on Brett Veach. I think that's oversimplifying things because step one isn't hold out for training camp. Step one is be Chris Jones, which Chris Jones has successfully done. Tyrann Mathieu was not going to be that. He was not going to be able to pull off that negotiation because they were ready to they were happy to play out the year. Say thanks for your service with us here, Tyrann, but we're gonna let you play this one out. Orlando Brown Jr. was almost even more blatant than that. And with Tyreek Hill, I do think, with some similarities to Chris Jones, it started with a real desire to get a deal done. Then the market changed, and they decided, okay, well, this is not worth this entire investment. But the market shouldn't have surprised the Chiefs at defensive tackle. And if Chris Jones's camp, if the Katz brothers raised the price when training camp started for no particular reason, and the Chiefs feel like they've been deceived on the negotiations since earlier in the offseason, then shame on them in that relationship. But they've done this once before. That seems unlikely to me. The Chiefs should not have been surprised by any element of what Chris Jones would want here, and Chris Jones's camp shouldn't be surprised that the Chiefs are trying to figure out how they can responsibly pay a guy who's going to have a mega deal going into his 30s. While he and Travis Kelce are on my TV right now in a DirecTV commercial. Travis Kelce may have been trying to grease the wheels there, because I'm guessing DirecTV went to him first, on account of SNL hosts and all of that. Maybe Travis Kelce said, hey, Chris, I got you a link up here. Probably wouldn't get this gig if you were playing for Washington or Detroit or whoever. But I can get you a national TV DirecTV commercial. So on the other hand, for my hypothetical here, if the Chiefs give in, I understand you could say, oh, well, that's a bad precedent to set, but no other player is going to have the lever to pull that says, I'm Chris Jones. Like I said earlier, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones are in a class of their own in terms of, and there's tiers between them. But those three guys are completely alone in terms of how important they are to the Chiefs. Above Tyreek Hill, who was way above Tyrann Mathieu, who was above Orlando Brown. Those three guys are in a class of their own. But then what happens if the Chiefs don't pay Chris Jones? Do say, hey, you've got this 1 year left on your deal. We don't like where this ends up for us, so you roll with it. We're gonna you play this year out, go in another Super Bowl, and we'll figure this thing out next year. We don't want to be doing this in week one. We're certainly not going to be doing negotiating during the regular season. You play it out, or don't show up and receive no money and lose a season, or show up late in the year to get your accrued season and make sure that contract keeps tolling after you lose $1 million a week. If the Chiefs go hard line, take it or leave it, it's going to be really hard for any defensive player to reasonably look at their future in Kansas City and think, yeah, I can play my way into a nice multi-year contract here. Yeah, I think I can. If I really show my value, I'm L'Jarius Sneed, and I'm gonna put everything on tape. I'm gonna be a Swiss Army knife that is just doing everything this team needs from me. I'm going to be a defensive weapon. You think L'Jarius Sneed looks around right now and realizes that, like, oh man, this might not be the place for me. I might follow the Charvarius Ward path and have to go get that second contract somewhere else. I might look at Chris Jones as a guy who was third in Defensive Player of the Year voting last year, the best defender in the AFC, arguably the best defender in the entire NFL. And the Chiefs decided, nah, we don't like the long-term view for this, so we're going to go ahead and do something else here. And that's a little bit of a hard sell. Now maybe Justin Reed saw the Tyrann Mathieu deal, and he's already thinking, yeah, I got one contract in Kansas City, and then they're going to do this all over again. And maybe they will. But I don't think that either side, and this is part of the reason that it's August 10th, and we still don't know where the status of this contract is. Chris Jones and the Chiefs, I don't think either side has an easy button they can push to say, all right, here's our terms. Take it or leave it. Because I still think it benefits both sides way too much to get this deal done. But if the Chiefs are hung up on, we are not going to guarantee your whatever age 32 season, and Chris Jones' side is saying, well, I'm not signing a deal that doesn't guarantee me more money, because if I play this year out and you trade me to somebody who wants to pay me next year, I'll get that money. Then you get stuck in that stalemate. I still think it's not only unreasonable and unlikely, I don't think impossible, frankly, because weirder stuff has happened. But it would be a horrible, horrible end to this story for Chris Jones to get traded between the draft and the start of the regular season. The only window to do that was like they did with Tyreek Hill, moving him early enough that you get draft picks and salary cap flexibility that you can use to fill in the gaps that the guy you have just moved on from has left behind. The Chiefs ultimately, and this didn't all happen post-Hill, but when the Chiefs have MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster and extra picks that allows them some flexibility to plan for the future with Sky Moore, all of those pieces coming together, that's very different than executing your entire offseason plan for one thing and then trading one of your superstars for next year's draft capital on the eve of the regular season. I just don't think that can be it for the Chiefs. I think there's an interesting next little pivot of what's the worst case scenario. If things go sour, what's the solution and where do we end up there? That's something that we might just have to talk about a little bit when we come back. I'm not predicting worst case scenarios, but I got to be aware of them and got to look and see what the future may hold, because I know the Chiefs and Chris Jones are both taking a look at that. We'll do the same when we come back next in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
The Royals return home Friday for 2 games with the Cardinals at the K, and football season is coming, folks, with the Chiefs home opener less than a month away. Oh, boy. If you're looking to see your favorite teams in person, baseball, football, no matter what, just check out my friends at TicketsForLess.com today. Shop the best selection of tickets and find the perfect seats now. With the Tickets for Less 100% Fansurance guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal on tickets and you never have to pay service fees. Shop now at TicketsForLess.com.
Hey, Kansas City golf fans, it's time to have some fun in the sun.
to talk worst case scenarios. You want to talk about worst case scenarios? Come on. We got a football game in just a few days. Let's talk about the things that keep us up at night. Like, what happens if Chris Jones doesn't get a new contract for Thursday against the Lions? And what happens next? I'm Joshua Briscoe. It's The Zone here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson will be back with us tomorrow. Drake on the other side of the glass. We'll talk to Kent Swanson about a lot of this stuff. Matt Verderam at noon. Kent at 11. Todd Lebo at 1. Here's what I'm circling now, and then I promise we'll talk about things other than Chris Jones's contract. 'Cause again, I understand that like the contract discussions, the numbers of what about this 1 million more average annual value, 5 million more, and a prorated signing bonus. It can all get lost in the weeds, and I still hope and still believe, with all of the authority you can hear in my voice right now, that we will eventually have a long-term Chris Jones deal to break down and talk about and look at, given to him by the Kansas City Chiefs that he signs. I believe in that still. For now. At the moment. But I was driving in here this morning, as one does, thinking about the worst-case scenarios. Because this is what the Chiefs have to have a plan for. Not a plan A, but just a plan for. You have to have options for anything you're uncertain about, particularly after the draft goes by. Particularly after the entire offseason of player movement, of the draft and free agency and all that comes with it. Once you've lost that window, if you have a player who you think is in the very likely situation of holding out in any way, shape, or form, you've got to have the break glass in case of holdout option. This is one place where I think the Chiefs still have a little more of the leverage. But I am lacking in confidence on so many parts of this that you may not be hearing in my voice that I felt a lot more confident about 30 days ago. But I think the worst realistic case scenario for the Chiefs is that this negotiation is over and the ball's back in Chris Jones's court. But because he's under contract, I think the Chiefs end up having the leverage there. If there is never another conversation between Brett Veach and Chris Jones's agents, the Chiefs can say, we really thought we'd make this work. Really bummed it didn't. You're paying $50,000 a day to not be here right now. And once the negotiations are over, like over, not just cooled down, hoping they'll heat up again, but once we have closed the books here, what's the point in you losing more money this season? My hope now is that at least both sides are still having these conversations because there is still hope of getting something done. But once there's no more angst, no more leverage, no more jockeying for position, it just doesn't make sense for Chris Jones to take a year of football off, or the first, whatever it would be, 8 games, 12 games, to make sure he gets the season to accrue. For him to sit out 2/3 of a season and to come back and to just be a malcontent working back up to speed to make sure he is able to hit free agency next offseason, or he could just sit out all year and say, hey, don't pay me, it's fine. You won't have to even franchise tag me next year, but just trade me. Just trade me next season. That just seems so unreasonable to me that is one click worse than the reasonable worst case scenario in my mind. Chris Jones is not going to help his future negotiating leverage by not playing football after the best year of his career. He needs to play this year, and he'll make almost $30 million if he does. He should get a long-term deal. Brett Veach has said he deserves this long-term deal. But at worst case, he's got to play. It just doesn't make any sense not to. So then the Chiefs are in a position where they still get their superstar defensive tackle. Maybe frustrated, maybe disengaged, all reports are that he's been working and is still in great shape. But maybe he's not as plugged in as you want him to be. Maybe he's not the leader that he would have been, knowing where his future was going to be, as opposed to realizing that he essentially, you have a breakup and you have to live out the rest of the lease with that person. That, I'm afraid that's what the vibe would be for Chris Jones in a lame duck year with the Chiefs after negotiations fell apart and he missed an entire training camp. But I think he'd play. I think the Chiefs would still get him. And now Chris Jones has the motivation of next year, I've got to get my money and I've got to prove that I am not going anywhere this season. That's why I think the Chiefs still have the slight edge in the leverage conversation. Because they want him to play. He's got to. And they can essentially have him play again, hoping to get one more peak year out of Chris Jones. And then next year, tag him and trade him before the draft. You won't have the leverage you would have this year, perhaps, and everyone knows that it's a move that's coming. But it's something you could do next year after getting another potentially and expectedly elite year out of him this upcoming season. It's hard for me to imagine it getting worse than that for the Chiefs. For Chris Jones, that also might be the worst case scenario. Okay, great. I'm basically playing on the franchise tag this year. I'm going to get tagged for real next year, and then they're going to send me to a destination that I may or may not want to go to. Now, he'd have some leverage because you're going to get traded and immediately get the long-term extension like the Chiefs did when they went and got Frank Clark. Or the Tyreek Hill wasn't tagged, but, trade him to Miami, and Miami's got a deal waiting for him when he gets there. I think that works out ultimately just fine for the Chiefs. It's still, to be clear, not what I'm rooting for. I don't think it's the best case scenario. I have my concerns about just how that impacts the team this year. But I do ultimately think Chris Jones would show up and be a professional and would do everything he could to win another Super Bowl before he ends up somewhere else. The kind of wild thing, though, is that getting the elite players is really difficult, which might be really obvious sounding. But having legitimately impact guys, and again, not to just keep digging on Tyrann Mathieu, just because it's a kind of a similar situation, but a different distinction. Tyrann Mathieu was a really important player and a Super Bowl champion and a vital part of that defense, but he wasn't Chris Jones. In terms of like, oh no, this is... And I don't know why a lot of Chiefs fans still don't have this appreciation. Chris Jones is a Bosa. He is Aaron Donald right now. Last year, he was Aaron Donald. I would understand you say, hey, Aaron Donald's got like 8 years of that production and Chris Jones had 1. But last year, he was the best interior defensive lineman in football, and he was neck and neck with Nick Bosa and Micah Parsons. And those are the two people he trailed in Defensive Player of the Year voting. He's the exact type of guy you do give $28, $29, $30 million a year to. And also, I don't think his drop-off, he's not a speed wide receiver like Tyreek Hill. Even when Chris Jones isn't performing at Aaron Donald levels, whatever year that kicks in, he's still going to be an excellent player. Which is another reason I think the Chiefs are willing to break some of their own rules to get this deal done. I just still thought it was going to be done by now. And here we are on August 10th. Here we are with this lead from Nate and The Athletic of no one in the organization expects him to arrive here before the end of training camp. It's not a fun conversation. We'll look ahead to a preseason game, and I'll be in this chair for the post-game show after it, so we're going to have plenty of time to dissect what we actually see there. It'll be a good time. But right now, I am back at this point of having at one point kind of circled today as a great time for that extension to get done. And now it sounds like a lot of that hope has left the building. It's an interesting spot for the team to be with their second or third most important player. But the Chiefs haven't yet shown if they're willing to value 3 players at a time. It's interesting. We'll continue to talk about it some with Kent Swanson, Matt Verderam, Todd Lebo. That's the plan for 11, noon, and 1 today. I'm Joshua Briscoe. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
I did it again. I think you should too. I hopped into another Best Ball Mania 4 draft yesterday on Underdog Fantasy. I drafted my team, and you might go, Josh, how on earth are you going to manage all these rosters? How many of these Underdog Fantasy drafts have you done? This is going to be a headache for you week to week. No, it's not, because that's what Underdog makes so easy. It's one of the best ways to play fantasy football. I think it's certainly the easiest place to play fantasy football, and Best Ball Mania 4 is the biggest fantasy football tournament of all time. $15 million in total prizes, $3 million to first place. I got a great deal to double your first deposit as well here. I'll give you that code in just a second. But Best Ball Mania format is great because it's a live snake draft that's exactly like the drafts you know and love in fantasy football. I had a year that I had like a dozen teams, and that was way too many. I've never done that again. I will never do that again, but I do enjoy all the drafts. Plus, it's a good way to make sure that you're ready to go for whenever your big drafts do come around. Instead of just doing mock drafts with a bunch of randos who don't have anything actually invested in that team, they might do something crazy, to test a draft strategy or whatever, and now they've ruined your entire mock lobby. No problem in Underdog because everybody's going in to win. The best ball format's a live snake draft, but there's no waivers, no trades. You just draft your team and that's it. Underdog sets the best lineup for you each week of the season, and you can set it and forget it until it's time to collect your cash. It's a great format. It's a ton of fun, and this offer runs out soon, so I need you to go sign up right now if you want to join in the fun at Underdog. You can sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com or via the App Store with promo code Briscoe. That's BRISCO, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Briscoe. Do it today. Must be 18 or over and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org.
Men, summer is here. It's a time to vacation, get outside, and enjoy life with the one you love. But if you have erectile dysfunction, you know...
It's The Zone here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Joshua Briscoe and the Drake are with you here. Jason will be back in tomorrow. Saw a story this morning, unrelated to Chris Jones, and it's about money, but a different type of it. Saw this about Phil Mickelson. There's an upcoming book by renowned professional gambler Billy Walters, as he is described in this ESPN.com story I'm reading from now. And we've heard stories of Phil Mickelson being a pretty avid gambler, oftentimes to his detriment. Drake, as we work on our Drake and Josh reboot here. Drake, what would you consider to be a lot of money? Just kind of in the vague sense. What's a lot of money to you?
Well, right now is, payday's not till next week. Like $100 would be a pretty good chunk.
It's a pretty good chunk of money,
But, this is nice round. $1 million sounds like a lot of money.
$1 million, I would say, Drake. I would say that's a ton of money.
It is.
I'd say $100 is an amount of money that you're like, oh man, I don't.
Yeah, that's real money.
I've never real money. $100 is real money. I've never spent $100 and been like, that's no big deal. $1,000, I would say. That's when we're like, especially if you are in wagering territory. If I'm sweating out, I've never experienced this, so I don't even know what it would be like.
I had a $1,500 pickup from the car maintenance yesterday, so that was painful.
That is a painful amount of money. I'm gonna read you the first full paragraph in the story from ESPN.com. Phil Mickelson bet more than $1 billion on football, basketball, and baseball over the past 3 decades, and even allegedly attempted to place a $400,000 wager on Team USA in the 2012 Ryder Cup in which he participated, according to an upcoming book by renowned professional gambler Billy Walters.
You said with a B.
$1 billion. Bravo. The actual losses that I'm gonna have to go find a different story that doesn't lead. There's different ways you can lead this story. I think getting $1 billion with the B in there is a heck of a way to do it. The Golf Digest story here says Phil Mickelson's gambling losses totaled to nearly $100 million.
See, I'm the guy that if I'm going to sit down and watch a game and think this will be more fun with a wager on it, I'll come up with a $1 parlay with like a 3 or 4 leg parlay for $1. And if I lose that $1, I'm not very happy about it, but it was kind of fun.
You had a nice time. You went through, had the fun of picking at the parlay.
I got the $2 Mega Millions ticket over the weekend to try to win that $1.5 billion, and I was very pleased when I got my $2 back.
Oh, that's huge! I was going to ask if you won, but you're here, so
I did not.
You didn't.
I don't live in Florida.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were saying you would already have bought a house in Florida. Like, that's pretty. I don't think you would have, but yeah, okay, got it. It was in. The winning ticket was sold. Winning ticket was sold in Florida. I don't know if it was sold to a Florida resident. I mean, maybe you bought a Mega Millions ticket in Florida and drove back again.
I did not.
Okay. This is just such an outrageous. Everything about this is outrageous to me. It shouldn't. Maybe some of it shouldn't be that surprising because it is Phil Mickelson. This is sort of a part of his whole deal. I don't think the $400,000 on a Ryder Cup he was playing in has necessarily gotten the weight of the story because the numbers are so big. Are we all cool with that? Can golfers bet on themselves? Does that? Where do we stand on that one from a purity of competition thing?
You can. Something tells me you can do that in England. Was it?
It was the Ryder Cup in 2012. I'll have to.
So I know gambling rules are a little bit different in England, and maybe you can vote.
That one was in Illinois.
Okay, well, and that's not part of the UK.
Not anymore. There was a big fight about that a couple hundred years ago and change. And maybe part of it to me is just how interesting it is that we're having to learn how to compartmentalize all of these things differently, and it's just going to keep happening. I mean, it is all of the sports betting is all obviously completely intertwined with all of sports media, and ESPN's taking another step in that direction. Oh, man, they're showing Chris Jones on ESPN right now, too. Which player not in camp is most concerning? I was going to not talk about Chris Jones here because it's making me too sad. So instead, I wanted to talk about Phil Mickelson losing $100 million, reportedly, and betting $1 billion in total. But every NFL player that, puts a nickel on a college team from the team facilities is, staunchly punished. And Phil Mickelson, it's Phil, the lefty. Lefty put $1 billion on a whole bunch of things over several years. This is Phil. We'll fill some time with Kent Swan for the KC Sports Network next.
20 years and running. Join us for the Kansas City Zoo Run. Run for the Otters on Saturday, September 23rd. Register today at kansascityzoorun.org for the 4-mile run or 1 mile.
excited to get to talk to you too. It's kind of funny though, because however often you're in here or however rarely the rotation, shows up, I think I don't know, 9 out of the 10 things that we might talk about today are things that we could have talked about or did talk about a month ago or 2 months ago. Like there's still no Chris Jones extension. I was listening to the lab when you guys were talking about that. And I actually caught a little bit of it live, just enough for you to all get a little bit. I don't know what the tenor was as you were kind of debating, talking about Charles Omenihu or Chris Jones first, but I've decided here that we'll start with Chris Jones because I thought we'd have news by now. I didn't know it would all be done by now, but I thought we would have some definitive groundwork for all right, things are okay. And I've felt a little bit worse with every passing week.
I think that's the right, you said tenor. I think that's the right, tenor that you should that's what you should feel. Because, we're halfway through training camp. And I think every passing day, every passing week, the likelihood that the Chiefs are going to get something done with Chris Jones diminishes. You hear some of the quotes that have come out from Brett Veach, I believe, from the KC Star, talking about how everyone had to take a breath and take a step back. Yeah. And, hey, the season starts September 7th. It's almost treating it like a deadline. Well, training camp is kind of a deadline too, and they blew past that one. And Chris Jones has incurred, I believe, at this point, about $1 million in fines. So you don't get the warm fuzzies from the negotiations at this point. And I'm with you. Every single passing day, I feel less and less likely that Chris Jones is getting a long-term extension, and this might be his last year as a Chief.
Well, and so that's sort of, I'm kind of in reverse engineering, what's everyone's worst case scenarios here? Because it still, to me, just doesn't make a lick of sense. And Veach has said this in The Athletic, and it's been, as you said, everyone's kind of had their chance to hear from Veach and kind of pick on different stuff. But as that quote where you talk about, everyone's taking some time to back off and then things will heat back up again. Well, that means that things are not warm right now. The warm fuzziness, and maybe this is Chris Jones' last year in Kansas City. If that's the worst case scenario, there's no realistic way where Chris Jones just sits out this season. And then and again, you guys mentioned a bunch of these names in the lab, but I am getting Tyrann Mathieu flashbacks, and Chris Jones is a better player and a more important player and vital to this defense. But it was very, very interesting to read Tyrann Mathieu's comments after his final season about knowing it was his final season and the impact of that. And I didn't think we'd get to that point with Chris Jones. And now I think we might be getting a lot closer than I would have bet a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the Tyrann thing might be a little different with, than Chris, and, because, if Chris Jones learns anything from Tyrann Mathieu had his struggles that season and wasn't really able to come out of that season with a great contract.
Oh,
and candidly, the Chiefs were probably right. And no, they were unequivocally right not to pay Tyrann Mathieu.
Yep.
They made the right choice. With Chris Jones, I think Joe Cullen has been a revelation for Chris. Chris was always an exceptional player. He was always an elite pass rusher, a game-changing player. I think last year you saw him become the most complete version of himself that you've ever seen. The consistency with the run fits, how he played the run. And obviously that's not why people pay him, but, they pay him to completely eviscerate offensive lines in the passing game. But just how well-rounded and the way he played with such discipline made the rest of that team better. And, I think, Chris did all the right things. But it's not probably the worst thing in the world if you can't come to a long-term extension with Chris Jones to have the carrot out there of a contract year. And I think, you're going to get a really good version of Chris Jones this season. You'll get the same kind of version that you got last year, I genuinely believe, because it's in Chris Jones' best interest to go out there and do what he did last year.
We can move on away from him after this, but since you mentioned, what he does for the guys around him, some of the I think it was pass rush win rate and double team rate among defensive tackles, and Chris Jones was number one in both, which puts him in the Patrick Mahomes quadrant of the top right corner of those charts completely by himself. What happens to George Karlaftis' development if he's playing next to Tershawn Wharton and Daniel Wise instead of Chris Jones? What does that say? Where does that set up the rest of a defensive line that is way more question marks than full-on exclamation points outside of Jones?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about this year, like I share the sentiment with you that like I don't think Chris Jones is sitting this year out, so he's going to have that year for his development. And if you're talking about next year, I think the Chiefs do a lot to try to figure out how to make that group better in the aggregate.
Mm-hmm.
But, if for some reason Chris Jones does miss some time this season, yeah, it's gonna be tricky for the Chiefs to just kind of rush for and see what happens, right? They're going to have to manufacture. They're going to have to be more aggressive. They're going to have to, try to send some more stunts and blitzes and those kind of things to try to help manufacture some pressure in. That's not the best version of this defense. It wasn't last year at least. And so you're going to rely on that secondary. You're going to put more heat and pressure on that secondary to take care of business. Play man coverage well. Be consistent in the back end of that defense because you're going to have to because you're having to do more to try to manufacture stuff.
What about with Charles Omenihu? Now we know that the first 6 games of the season, it's going to fall to George Karlaftis and FAU and Mike Dana and Malik Herring and figuring out kind of what that group of edges can do, presumably alongside Chris Jones and Tershawn Wharton working his way back. Derek Nottie is back. Keandre Coburn we've talked about and But what did you make of it being 6 games for Charles Omenihu? Did that surprise you at all? It sounded to me, all editorialized, that Andy Reid was a little surprised it landed at 6. Not that he was suspended at all, but 6 games. And what's that impact? Because we were really excited about what Omenihu was going to bring, and now he's missing the first third of the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising, but I mean, I feel like, I think the Omenihu camp had to have known that they were getting some kind of substantial suspension. Maybe it was 4, maybe it was 6, who knows. But, I mean, the contract that he signed kind of reflects that he knew he was going to be missing a relatively, impactful sample size, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, I know Andy Reid obviously sounded a little surprised. I don't know what kind of appeal he's even really able to give at this point. But that also doesn't surprise me that he got 6 because, I think, the NFL is slowly trying to create more strict standards on some of the, the violence, that Omenihu was accused of. It kind of seems like they're trying to get a little bit more control of that. So who knows? 6 sounds a little bit, heavy. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily to the penalty, just based on past history, but they're going to have to deal with it. And if they can get it reduced, great. But if not, it's going to be tough sledding for a young group.
Is there anybody in that group that you go, okay, all right, well, I can live with FAU getting some more early season reps, or because as he's talked about, even being a little behind this offseason program because of the injury and missing some OTA time? Is that something that terrifies you right out of the gate? What does the DE group away from Omenihu make you feel right now?
So it's going to sound really, I'm so numb to a lot of this, and it's more of a 50,000-foot view of this football team where it's like this team might struggle with their defensive ends, but Mahomes is going to put up 35 points in his absence to try to help it. But no, I think Felix Anudike-Uzomah, it could be a big opportunity for him. And I look at last year's defense. I look at last year's rookie class, and this group obviously is one of the best drafts in recent NFL history. But they got thrown into the fire out of necessity. And last year was a lot about throwing young guys in the fire out of necessity. And you saw this team have to be a little bit more static with their coverage too, because they were playing a lot of young guys in the back end of their defense. But you saw George Karlaftis get thrown into the fire and have to play a lot of snaps early. I think this could be an opportunity to throw someone like Felix Anudike-Uzomah into the fire. And it may not be the prettiest thing for this team the first 6 weeks as they try to cobble things together and provide enough resistance to, try to, win football games. Hopefully Chris Jones is back and in great shape. That'll be a big help. But it could serve as an opportunity to just throw Felix Anudike-Uzomah into the fire. And in that regard, I'm excited because sometimes it's kind of fun to see young guys play out of necessity, especially when you've seen the trends of this team and how Steve Spagnuolo typically preferred, the developmental timeline for rookies is, they don't always get to play a ton in year one.
We're talking to the Kirkland King, Kent Swanson. You can follow him on Twitter at Kent_Swanson. Do you have a Kirkland favorite suggestion that I can get from you right now? I haven't been able to get their diet green tea in a while, which is really frustrating because that was a treat and we can't find it anymore.
There's so many suggestions I could give you. If you've ever had the late July jalapeno lime chips, it's like a grown up. It's like a grown up Dorito.
I'm in.
It's perfect. If you ever get into golf, we'll take you to Costco. The Missouri side, they have a great liquor selection. That's a lot of quality brands that's
true.
They're just they slap the Kirkland brand on them, but it's quality stuff. That's all. We should start a podcast about that.
Yeah,
I could do a weekly show on what's going on at Costco.
I think we could do it in just like the patio furniture section of the Costco, and just say, hey, we're live in whatever Costco we're in that week, and here's what we found today. Maybe it's part taste test, part endorsing our favorite particular products, part me trying to get a hold of Costco corporate to bring back the diet citrus green tea.
And there's just ever so slight, changes to how each Costco does regionally. I was in a Tulsa Costco.
Oh, tell me more.
Oh, it was the biggest Costco I've ever seen.
Really?
It was like a giant, it's double in size. They had a golf simulator just hanging out there.
Woo!
It was like their whole beverage. The local layouts of the Costcos in the Kansas City Metro are all pretty similar. They had a whole extra wing devoted to canned beverages, both adult and non-adult. It was a beautiful layout. It was spacious. I vacationed there. We didn't even make it to the house. We just posted up in the back.
So this is something that I've really been trying to just sort of go through the motions with and at least figure out where I go from here, especially as we've had interns this year who are 19 and suddenly I'm not only not the youngest person in this building, I'm almost 10 years older than someone else who's asking me, how the radio buttons work. But at what point in your life do you think that you started, divining real joy out of a Costco experience? And should I be embracing this? Should I be trying to rage against it? Is raging against it the part that is where people eventually, become cringe, as the kids say?
Oh, buddy, I think you should lean in as quickly as you possibly can. I think I was kind of an early adopter. Did you guys grow up going to Costco as a kid, though?
My family was a Sam's Club family.
Did you go as a family?
Sometimes, but not necessarily as an outing. I would go with my mom sometimes.
We had our routine was, hey, church on Sunday, family trip to Costco right after.
Love that.
And so I think I had, this is my teen years, right? I started when I was a teen, but I think I was a full-fledged Costco king by 26. Right before we started having kids, I'm excited to go to Costco. I can't wait. But just the older and older you get, the more and more you appreciate it. It's an experience. You don't get out much, when you have two kids.
This is the part that I've been wondering about, because that's not me right now. But
that's okay.
The larger appeal is there. I have said the phrase to Renee now multiple times. We just need to have a Costco day sometime soon, because I want to be able to survey the land and look at a 64 pack of some sort of sugar-free soda that I haven't tried yet and say, you know what? Let's go. I'm feeling like a gambler today. Let's risk it. Let's have a 64 pack of these, and we're gonna just hope that they turn out okay. And I've won some of those and I've lost some of those. C'est la vie.
I mean, as you guys are doing life together, and I think you'll start coming to a real, when you start, diving in further and further into the whole marriage thing, I think you'll find that Costco provides something valuable to both of you. I can't wait to tell you guys about Costco Travel someday, because they have a whole travel wing, a whole website devoted to travel. So just wait for that. That's a game changer. That's how I went on my vacation to Hawaii this year, was through Costco. I'm not even joking. I am a full-fledged Costco evangelist.
Yeah, so here's what's dawned on me in this moment is that either Renee absolutely fully knows about Costco travel and has just been keeping that from me because she knows it stresses me out when she is simultaneously planning like 4 vacations that we can't take right now, or I will be able to say tonight, hey, Renee, have you ever heard of Costco travel? And it's going to make her week. And I'm going to pretend that I found out about it, and you're going to just get one of those silent assists. Like, it's not even going to show up on the box score, but you're going to know it's the pass before the pass for the pass, but the setup was still there. Your vision was immaculate.
It's amazing what you can accomplish when no one cares about getting the credit, and I don't. I genuinely don't. I want what's best for you. I want you to thrive.
Thank you.
And I want you to be fully ingratiated into the Costco culture. So,
yeah.
Again, not a cult.
Not a cult.
Not a cult.
Not a cult. People keep saying that it's a cult. It's not a cult.
I mean, there's, they do serve Kool-Aid there.
It's a tremendous community, of just fellow believers behind one unified cause. They, like you said, they do sell Kool-Aid and other sugary beverages. I will say, just vis-a-vis cults and all of that, I will drink the Kool-Aid. I will need it to be sugar-free Kool-Aid just on account of the diabetes and everything. But I think Costco's got me covered there, except for the damn green tea. I don't know if I've made it clear enough that is like a real shining light in the sugar-free drink situation, and they took it away from me. Other than that, I'm still a true believer. I'm working on it.
Hey, look, just give it time. Things come back all the time. If there's nothing, here's the thing: if you are truly in Costco's demographic, that angst and emotion you're feeling is probably shared with a lot of other people, and they just know. They just know to bring stuff back, and then they do. And that's the best thing about them, is they have what you need, and they always come and surprise you just a little bit. There's always something there that you're like, oh, I can't believe this is back. Thank you, Costco, for knowing exactly what I needed and exactly what I wanted. It's just, but not a cult. It's not a cult. It's just a lifestyle. That's all.
I can deal with a lifestyle with a membership program. I mean, that feels kind of fun. It's nice to belong to something, even if there are goat sacrifices in the back of the warehouse. Kent Swanson, KC Sports Network, not getting the credit, just wanting to do what's best for the team. That's a real offensive lineman mentality, Kent, and I really respect that from you. And I'm segueing back to a serious sports topic just because I can't believe we haven't said this man's name 500 times in this training camp period. Nobody's talking about Donovan Smith, and I think that's great. Your thoughts?
Yes, no news is good news. I think you're right. Like, just that we're not hearing a bunch of. It could cut both ways. It could be this edge rusher group stinks.
Yeah, fair. Good
and
point.
They're really, it could be that we don't know if Donovan Smith is good and the edge group can't get up the arc. It could be that. But I think genuinely no news is good news. You kind of hear some of the buzz and positivity that's coming out of camp. There's some articles and some reports that, the Chiefs really they think this is the best group of bookends in Mahomes' career, which, I think that's a high bar. I think Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz is a very high bar to clear. So if they're saying stuff like that, that's obviously a good sign that there's some level of strong belief that what they have is good. It could, I know that Donovan Smith's kind of been a lightning rod this offseason in the discourse at times, but I think they might be onto something there. I think Donovan Smith's the most likely weak link on this offensive line group. Mm-hmm. But if you do buy the narrative that, hey, he played through a ton of injury last year, the struggles that you saw from him were because of those injuries, okay, if you buy that, if you believe that, you can see a path to a rebound. He's still a relatively young guy. I don't believe he's turned 30 yet. And he's had a lot of success in this league. He's played at a capable level on some really good football teams, protecting one of the for now, the GOAT, Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's reason to be optimistic, but you don't find out till you find out week one when it really matters. The good news is the Chiefs have shown an ability to help their left tackle because they had to do it for Orlando Brown. And if you have 4 other spots just locked up and they don't really need help, then you can get away with Donovan Smith maybe needing a little bit more, out of the backfield to kind of help, lock things up. So I feel good about where that offensive line is, and, you just hope they all stay healthy.
Yeah, that's where I'm at, too. I don't need all that much from Donovan Smith. If he's just fine enough, and like you said, if he's the weak link that can get a little bit of help, if the other 4 guys are completely solid in their roles, I can live with that. And like you've said, it is like a weird way to talk about this football team where any concern can reasonably be dissuaged by going, yeah, well, Patrick Mahomes plays quarterback, so I'm not losing any sleep over that tonight. So here's my last, training camp-based question for you is that I want to know what you're excited about outside of the Mahomes and Kelsey kind of superstar class. What have you seen or heard out of camp that you say, hey, you know what? This not only doesn't concern me, this downright puts a smile on my face.
I am super excited to see the young receivers this training or this preseason. Heard really good things about Rashee Rice. Heard good things about Sky Moore. Heard good things about Justin Ross. I look at last year and we saw last year as a little bit of a reset, and we said, hey, if the Chiefs can figure out how to find a ton of success on the fly with a young defense and a big rookie class that's going to have to be leaned on a lot more than any rookie class has ever been leaned on in Andy Reid's tenure. If they can find success then, look out. Well, if the Chiefs can find success with a pair of, second-round young receivers and an undrafted free agent, if they're able to see those guys take steps and be a big impact on this offense, this snowball is just going to keep rolling. I think that's the thing that continues the snowball from last year and just makes this roster construction, this team, we start talking dynasty.
Yeah.
If we're able to see these guys take that step. And so I'm really excited to see the young guys, the young receivers, if they are really, as advertised, because if they are, this is something that is going to just continue to morph into, multiple Super Bowls or, if they're just continuing to keep that rolling on, it'll be unbelievable. And Rashee Rice, Rashee Rice is the one I'm most excited to watch, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, so you've heard things. Is that just the style of play and how you think the offense might use them, or just bigger unknown?
I think it's a little bit of everything. His evaluation is a little tricky from the draft stuff because he played hurt. And so, he had some production the year prior for sure, but it was unrefined and it was tricky to kind of evaluate him. But you've seen some of the stuff he's done at this point in camp, and yeah, he's always kind of been a guy that wins in contested catches in college, and it doesn't always translate, but it seems like it has. So some of those strengths and the traits, regardless of the athletic limitations, because the injuries are popping up, and it seems like he's doing some stuff in the Juju role. He kind of looks like Juju sometimes carrying the football. There's some really positive indicators with him that I'm just very intrigued to see kind of put all together.
Anything outside of the first quarter that you think is worth watching on Sunday? So any one or any position group you want to see in let's go second half, even down the depth chart a little bit.
I am fascinated. This is another one of those hey, if you unlock this and this works, good luck, NFL. Wanya Morris, playing a little bit of left tackle, kind of playing as the swing guy. I want to see him at left tackle. I want to see if if everything goes well, we're probably not seeing Wanya Morris this year.
Right.
But if we get a look at him at left tackle for these next 3 games and he's showing signs of, positivity, if he's looking good, maybe the Chiefs don't feel the need to draft a left tackle early next season. Maybe that's another way that they're able to just kind of keep this thing rolling because they identified a left tackle in the 3rd round. It's those kind of moves that, like, it's weird because of how settled this team is, how good this team is. It's more about long-term kind of, outlook for me because so much of this roster is already settled. But that's another one, like, if Wanya Morris can play left tackle capably, maybe you don't feel the need to draft a left tackle in round 1 next year and everything's kind of open to you.
I think the long-term look for you, Kent Swanson, is just as bright as it is for the Chiefs. I don't know if you're a first-round talent, an undrafted free agent who's making some highlight plays or where you stand, but I will see you in the aisles of Costco very soon and talk to you again very shortly and keep up with the KC Sports Network and the KC Lab podcast. Just search for KC Sports Network wherever you get your podcast, and you'll find the Chiefs feed with the Lab there with Kent and Craig and Matt as they rotate around every Thursday with us here in the Zone. Kent, I appreciate it, sir.
Always, man. Good talking to you.
Write a letter about that green tea. More Zone next.
You're in the Zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Proper diagnosis and treatment of erectile dysfunction requires good medical practitioners and the right medical solution for your specific condition, because your health matters.
Thanks again to Kent Swanson of the KC Sports Network. The KC Laboratory Podcast is a great use of your time if you enjoy hearing us talk to Kent Swanson, Craig Stout, Maddie Lane. Three of them rotate through with us here in the zone. But right now, that's our training camp coverage, which is presented by Barstool Sportsbook at Hollywood Casino, Bud Light, Greengrass Cattle Co., and Premier Volvo Cars of Overland Park. Appreciate them for helping us bring you all the coverage from Chiefs camp that we've been able to bring you so far. And still plenty of preseason action to go, but it is kind of wild that we have fully arrived to a week where there will be a football game this Sunday that the Kansas City Chiefs play and kick off at noon, which is only going to happen, I think, only one time this upcoming season where they have a noon kickoff on a Sunday. They might, if Christmas is a Sunday, that might also be one. But there's only like one normal noon kickoff. I think it's week 2 or something for the Chiefs this year. But we're gonna get to get one of those noon kicks again on Sunday. We'll have coverage for you leading up to kickoff, and then after the game, we'll be live here with the Sports Radio 810 WHB postgame show. I'll be back in this chair to talk about whatever it is that we're seeing from those guys. And I think Kent just gave us a great nominee for who we should be paying attention to in the back half of the game. We'll hear from Andy Reid tomorrow, and he'll say that all the quarterbacks will each get a quarter, and that will kind of work with the team, first team, second team, third team, fourth team. We'll hear that from Andy Reid tomorrow. It will not be entirely true tomorrow, but we'll hear something very close to that from him. And as we've talked about, it varies from year to year, but generally I think what the real strategy for Andy Reid is let's get our ones out there for long enough for them to get hit, to feel some real contact that's a little more serious than training camp thudding, and hopefully enough to see one series where they look like they're in a groove and then get them out of there. Of course, I live in fear of preseason injuries. How could you not? How would anyone not be worried about that? But ultimately, if you're talking about one freak rep, I do think there's probably something, and more modern coaches are disagreeing with this, and I generally lean more modern, and I don't know. I think Andy Reid's got a point here. I don't know that I want week 1 of a real football game to be the first time my guys get hit, or hit someone else for that matter. I would be sick to my stomach if Trent McDuffie tweaked a hamstring in New Orleans, but I don't want his first rep of the of live fire to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, working him out of the slot and then having to figure out how to bring that dude to the ground. It makes sense to continue just little bits of ramping up to full-on week 1 speed. I do think that makes sense. But, of course, we're not going to see a ton of the ones, and that part I think is relatively simple. What do you want to see from the starters? Don't get hurt, get in a groove, show that the trains are moving, find Sky Moore early on, and then see if the young receivers can just catch a few passes while you march down, score a touchdown, hit Travis Kelce for 6, get out of there, we'll see you next week. I think that's the goal for the ones. But Kent going to Wanya Morris, and I've got another one from this rookie class in particular that I'm very interested to see in the preseason, who I don't expect we'll see very much of in the regular season. Wanya Morris, if he is in fact getting work on the left side with the twos in this game coming up on Sunday, he could be out there for a while, and I think it will be fascinating to see how he holds his own, because he started at left side, mostly played the right side at Oklahoma, and then now he's here in this sort of a little bit of a swing role that the Chiefs have been working him through in camp, but we've certainly seen him on the left side plenty with the twos. I think he's gotten a few reps on the right, but the first shot here appears to be, let's see if we can get Wanya Morris to play on the left side. I think Kent's right when he says the Chiefs don't want to see Wanya Morris play this year if they can help it. If Donovan Smith is a good left tackle, Morris is not going to be thrown in there for no reason as a rookie. But if he needs to be in that position, can he be? Can he hold his own? And then more importantly, though, what's the long-term view for him? Because if he can put some good stuff on tape, make the Chiefs believers through practice this year, and let Donovan Smith hold that position this upcoming season, if the Chiefs say, yeah, hey guys, 2024 left tackle, we got Wanya Morris on a rookie deal. At right tackle, we got Juwan Taylor on an expensive deal, but those are our two tackles, and we're happy to have them in those two places. We have the best interior offensive line in football. Not only does that keep you from having to draft a lineman, which is a tackle in the first round, or however early you'd have to do it, or spend money to go find another guy who could step in there. Not only does it save you from having to put resources into left tackle, if Wanya is your guy, as a third-round pick would be a treat, obviously. We had similar conversations about Lucas Niang. It's no guarantee that comes together. But if you are able to get that value and have that position taken care of, not only is it not a concern, you can use those assets on another position group. If, I don't think this is going to happen. It's not what I want to happen. But if you trade Chris Jones next offseason, you get a little bit of draft capital back there. Maybe you're working with a couple of first-round picks now, your own and someone else's. You either have an opportunity to move up to go get an impact player of some sort if you think, hey, man, there's a defensive tackle coming out of this class who's going to beat Chris Jones, just younger. We're going to go get that guy. Or it's you keep your multiple shots, first-round picks, or they moved up a little bit for Trent McDuffie and then kept their pick for George Karlaftis when, in the aftermath of the Tyreek Hill trade. They didn't jump up. They didn't package those two picks to go up to 10. But it gives you a ton of roster-building flexibility. That's all true. All of that same logic is true for Sky Moore and Rashee Rice and Justin Ross, by the way. If those guys can be young, rookie contract, controllable asset players who are at the very least good enough for your offense to keep humming because your quarterback is Patrick Mahomes, and maybe in a best-case scenario, one of those guys ends up being a plus receiver, a true number one, You could spend your draft class on the trenches every year if you want, and just keep making it impossible to poke a hole in the dynasty that you're building. You can just find value positions, and so it's tackles, maybe it is pass rushers, whoever you end up valuing and however the board falls, you are able to really take the best player available at a premium position and make that the way that you continue to reload your roster. It's something the Eagles have done really well to this point. They don't have the quarterback the Chiefs do, and the Chiefs, I think, understand all of this. There's a really, really cool future that is unlocked if Rashee Rice, Wanya Morris, Sky Moore, Justin Ross are real dudes. Just like it was for Trey Smith also. A little bit of a different example because guard's not as premium of a position as tackle. But you don't have to worry about right guard until it's time to pay him. And you're good. And that offsets all the money you're giving to Joe Thuney. And you got Creed Humphrey, obviously. Like that was, he was a premium pick in the second round. Late second round, but still, like you thought they probably just drafted their starting center as a rookie there in Creed. Still incredible value, great payoff. Sky Moore and Rashee Rice also premium picks, of course. But it unlocks so many more options. It keeps all your options open going forward, which would be an awesome way to continue to evaluate. There's another player that I am looking forward to seeing because he doesn't quite fit the mold. But I think we should take a break now. If we do that, Drake, I know I don't want to alarm you, but I'm volunteering to take a break earlier than we absolutely have to, so we have more time in the last segment of the hour. I know this is Drake right now is unconscious. He just actually passed out. Can you just give him a little slap and wake him up? We're gonna take an early break here in the Zone.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
All right, I gave you the tease for what I'm looking forward to, or another player I'm looking forward to in the game coming up on Sunday. I obviously think you could pick any of the rookies for various reasons and want to just see them on a football field. But there's another layer to it for at least one of these guys that I'm just very excited to see when he gets used and how he gets used. We've talked a lot about Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Where is he in the process? He's a defensive end. We talked a lot about Keandre Coburn, defensive tackle. He was a 6th-round pick out of Texas. And I think I know how he'll get used, which is to drop him in the middle of that defensive line, tell him to hold the spot, and try to get a little push if he can. But I'm not sure how the Chiefs are going to use 5th-round pick out of Stephen F. Austin, B.J. Thompson. Because he is the most non-stereotypical Steve Spagnuolo selection. 4 S's for you there. Alliteration rules. Alliteration's awesome. He is the least stereotypical Steve Spagnuolo type of defensive end the Chiefs have drafted since Spags got here. They like the big physical edges that Frank Clark was at his peak, that George Karlaftis projects to. Not necessarily guys with great bend. Mike Dana was obviously, a later round pick as well. And so he's like kind of maybe a little bit, he doesn't have all the same size, but the skills and the things he's the best at, where he can play in the interior and he can really hold that edge, that stuff the Chiefs really value. Felix is a little bit of a different speed in terms of him having some of that bend and pass rush skills that we'll just see how that translates. But B.J. Thompson is a real outlier. And so I'm interested to see, and preseason games without full-on game planning is you can glean what you can glean. But I'm going to be really interested to see if at any point, even if it's deep into the second half, if the Chiefs put B.J. Thompson out there on the edge and say, hey man, pin your ears back, get around this corner, and go hunt the quarterback. And then really, just as importantly for the Chiefs in their evaluation of B.J. Thompson, what happens when they run right at you? When an NFL team, even NFL backups, when an NFL team decides, all right, that long, skinny guy over there who has some speed and quickness but is undersized thickness-wise at that position, we're going to let the tackle go ahead and get hands on you first, and then we're going to run right at your face. Maybe get somebody to pull also, come over and just get a little lead block in here. Probably not running a lot of fullback options. But we are going to bring the traffic to you, and we are going to see if we can clear you out of here like a feather in a wind tunnel. And can he hold up to that part of the game, or is he going to be limited as a pass rusher only? Hey, it's 3rd and 14. Here comes B.J. Thompson. I hope that either way he's on the field a lot on Sunday because, again, this is about evaluation against live reps. And if he's out there and he doesn't look very good against the 2s or 3s of the Saints, then I will, adjust accordingly, and we'll just assume we're probably not going to see him much this regular season. And it's a learning curve, a building process, both for him physically and for him getting, used to what the Chiefs need from that position. Maybe they just roll him out there in the passing situations they think he might be in this regular season. I don't know how they're going to try to allocate those snaps, because to go to a draft class not from this year and not from the year prior, but back to 2021, the Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey class, they had 2 second-round picks in that year. No first, no third. And the 4th-round pick that year has been probably the most forgotten. It was Bolton, Creed Humphrey. In the 4th round, Joshua Kando out of Florida State. And then Noah Gray, who we talked about plenty. Cornell Powell, who we talked about at the time, but certainly seems like he stuck around on the practice squad. Maybe he's back there again this year. And then Trey Smith in the 6th, which is arguably the definitive steal of that entire year's draft class. Josh Kando's had a couple of reps at camp that I've seen. Hey, you know what? There's something there from Josh Kando. There's a little bit of a spark, but we have never seen him put that together in any sort of consistent way. And frankly, a lot of the time, he just looks stiff. He just looks stiff, not that powerful, not that bendy, not that explosive. But for a guy like him, a mid-round pick from 2 draft classes removed, this is pretty close to, and this is unfair, but it's just sort of how the NFL churns. I think it makes sense to say we'd like to give this guy, 2 or 3 full camps, 2 or 3 years, some time to get to what we think is going to be the peak of their development physically, mentally, and then see what you got. But it's very hard to get reps in regular season games if you haven't proven anything yet. And so I think Josh Kaindoh, and to some extent by elimination, Malik Herring, with Charles Omenihu being suspended for the first 6 games, both of those guys I think have a chance to lock their spot on the roster, play their way off the roster, play their way into actual regular season playing time, or convince the Chiefs that they are a depth piece who is maybe there's still some development to be had, but more often than not, more likely than not, when Omenihu comes back, maybe you're the guy that gets cut. That is a huge array of outcomes, and it seems like the Chiefs really like Malik Herring, and they invested in Josh Kaindoh. They've kept him around, and maybe a year being coached by Joe Cullen last year is going to bring him along to a new level in this preseason. But it's really hard to evaluate that in training camp, even in team periods, certainly in one-on-ones. If you're going to be the type of person that is breathlessly watching 3 Chiefs preseason games, you might as well try to watch it like a coach, like an evaluator. Because we're all kind of doing that a little bit, right? It doesn't have quite the same pop open a brewski, have the friends over, let's all have a good time watching Patrick Mahomes do alien bleep. It's a preseason game. If you're there in the second half, look for the guys whose names you recognize, remember where they got drafted, but you haven't seen them do it at the pro level yet, at the regular season level yet. The Chiefs are going to be looking for some help at defensive end. We'll talk about that and much more. Matt Verderam of SI next.
Hey, it's Bob with Culligan Water. The Aquasential...
Zone is brought to you by Guaranteed Foods, official sponsor of Family Mealtime. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
It's the Zone rolling on here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. No Jason Anderson today. He'll be back tomorrow. I'm Joshua Briscoe alongside the Drake. Joined now by our friend Matt Verderam of Sports Illustrated. You can read his work at SI.com, and you can join 30,000 other people with great taste and follow him on Twitter at Matt Verderam. Matt, the 30,000 threshold as the training camp tour is going on, did you celebrate that and your birthday with just a big pile of the Arby's finest?
I celebrated my birthday by watching the Bears at training camp and then driving 4.5 hours to Indianapolis. So,
is that a scenic drive?
My birthday was pretty full.
Yeah. What's the worst route you've covered so far? Not an indictment of any of the cities, but the worst drive, point A to point B, that you've taken to this point.
From Allen Park, Michigan, to my house outside Chicago. That was almost 6 hours. But I leave Saturday afternoon for Minnesota, which is about 5 hours. And then from Minnesota, I go to Kansas City, and that's 6 hours. And then back to my house again, which is another 6.5 hours. So I got a lot of time to think. I should have some really good story ideas by the time I get out of my car.
Yeah, what are you doing when you're not, just slamming some sort of sports content in the car? You've got to take a break from it in tens of, if not eventually, triple digit hours in the car. Are you going to music? Are you going to audio books? Do you have a podcast that you're listening to more often than not? What's the strategy here?
It depends. I mean, you're right. I definitely do take a break. I listen to pods. I'll throw on Bill Simmons or Shillo or something like that, and listen to those guys. I enjoy some of the stuff the Ringer does. But honestly, so you don't have kids,
right?
So you don't have to. I'm just so happy to have silence. I am more than okay with just driving in complete silence for multiple hours at a shot. It's like I don't mind driving. I drive every year from outside Chicago all the way back to where I grew up in New York, and it's like a 13-hour drive, and I do that at least once or twice every year. So I don't mind the drive, and it's fun. It's fun doing a camp tour and seeing these teams, and there are some drives that are better than others, but all in all, it's been fun.
Similar, but an actual question about the places you do visit. Is there a team that just has the best camp setup for one reason or another that you just? I mean, I know most teams are just at their regular facilities now. I know the Chiefs are an outlier there, but anybody have facilities that you've walked into over this year, last year, anytime that you go, oh man, this is the best of the best? I
gotta tell you, the Lions are first class all the way.
Really,
the Lions facility is awesome. It's in Allen Park, right outside Detroit. It's just a beautiful building. They have a great setup. You couldn't have a better PR staff. I mean, everybody over there does great work, and they're super helpful. Just all of it, honestly. I mean, and I give them a lot of credit. The day I was there, which was Tuesday, they were having joint practices with the Giants. So it wasn't just their local media. It was all the Giants media. Then it was people who were national. I was there. Jeremy Fowler was there. Kim Jones was there. Jay Glazer, Mike Tariq. I mean, it was – and then on top of that, Barry Sanders and Marshawn Lynch were there. I don't know why Marshawn Lynch was there, but he was there. Huh. At first I was like, oh, did he go to college? And then I realized, no, I went to Cal.
Yeah.
So I don't know. He's not from – I have no idea why he was there, but he was there. Barry Sanders. It was pretty cool.
I don't think you can ever at this point question why Marshawn Lynch is anywhere. It's between the Amazon stuff and did you ever watch Murderville on Netflix a year or so ago?
Never even heard of it. No.
It is essentially an improv murder mystery series with Will Arnett playing the main character with a rotating guest of side characters, and one of them is Marshawn Lynch. There is a Marshawn Lynch episode that is as funny as anything on Netflix. It's tremendous. So I would just be happy to see Marshawn Lynch anywhere. But I wanted to talk to you about some of the national storylines and some of the places you've already stopped before we get to the latest Chris Jones news, which is that things are still kind of stuck here. We'll do some Chiefs in a minute, but I wanted to know what you were seeing there from the Lions and Giants, being there for the joint practice, and also having some specific takeaways that you wrote about on SI about the quarterback situations for those two teams. I'm fascinated by it. I thought that Detroit would have been an awesome landing spot for an Anthony Richardson. That would have made me very happy. But they've got Jared Goff and a pretty good team around him. Some weird first-round picks this year. And meanwhile, the Giants have been at the middle of conversations this offseason about not paying Saquon Barkley. They got the deal done for like an extra $1 million and not a whole lot more. What was the vibe there with those two teams coming together? And am I right to wonder about them? I don't want to say pointing in different directions, but they're in some unique spots, specifically with both of their quarterbacks and the decisions they made with them this offseason.
Well, all right. So the Giants, before I even went and saw them, my feeling on the Giants is they're going to kind of regress this year.
Okay, yeah.
Watching them, I have competing thoughts. One is they're really well coached. So there's a part of me that just feels kind of like Pittsburgh with Tom and all these years. When you're like, I don't know about the talent, then you watch them and you're like, they figure out how to win. I think the Giants are going to have some of that, so I don't think there's going to be like some major regression. That said, and to be fair, everybody who's been watching Daniel Jones says he's had a very good camp. When I was watching him on Tuesday, he had a very tough day. They just don't have receivers. Like I don't know who's getting open for that team. I mean, Waller looked good. He looked healthy. But, like, other than you have, like, Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton and Paris Campbell, I don't know. Like, if you got Mahomes, that's fine.
Right.
If you have Daniel Jones, I know that's fine. And if I got to listen to one more person say, well, he had a breakout year last year. He threw for 3,200 yards and 15 touchdowns.
Man,
that's... Like, he did not have a breakout year. No. So, I mean, he didn't turn the ball over. He ran for 700 yards. That's great. But, like, you're not winning any major games with him not having help around them. Detroit, on the other hand, Detroit looked fantastic. Like, I would not be surprised if Detroit's a team that's playing in the divisional round this year, and you're like, yeah, they could win that game. They have a ton of talent, and I'm with you. Like, their first-round picks, I didn't know what was going on. But Gibbs, I got to say, was incredible the day I was there. And, they like their tight end a lot. The second-round pick, Sam Laporta. The questions with Detroit are this. With Amon-Ra St. Brown, you got a stud on the outside, but who's your other guy? Because Jameson Williams is suspended. You don't even know when he comes back if he's going to be good. He's a kid. You have no idea. The other question with Detroit's just going to be defensively. They added a lot of new pieces, mostly in the secondary. What does that look like, and how long does that take to come together? I think Detroit is good. I think Detroit's a team that could be an 11-win team, 10-11. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't have any questions. I think defensively is the biggest one for me. What are you going to do in that secondary? You have a ton of new guys. What does that look like?
How do they fit into that division? Because that whole division is fascinating to me when you obviously have the Packers making an enormous change at quarterback. Right. The Vikings, I loved watching Kirk Cousins in quarterback, much to my chagrin and surprise, but I really did. But they always seem kind of fraudulent. How do you shake up that division right now? Not to forget the Bears exist, but,
No, they're also there. Well, I was at Bears camp. You're not wrong to just kind of highlight Minnesota and Green Bay. Listen, I think the Bears back seven is going to be very good. Yeah. The problem with the Bears is I just don't believe in the lines on either side of the ball. And Fields has an immense amount of talent. He has to get rid of the ball quicker. He has to get the ball out. I mean, he has this tendency to hit his back foot and then kind of sit there. And you're going to be throwing hospital balls to guys if you do that in games. So I think the Bears are the team that you'll look at and go, probably fourth. I have not seen the Packers yet. I will. I have not gone to see them yet. I did see them, however, in OTAs. Now, on the day that I saw them, and mind you, it was like the second day of OTAs, Love was 6 of 16 and had 3 dropped interceptions. So is that just, hey, we're working on some red zone stuff, bad day, or is that a problem? Now, if you read the reports coming out of Green Bay, that seems to be a problem.
Yeah.
I tend to think the Packers are going to be like a 7-win team. I like their defensive talent, but they have a coordinator who has not always gotten the most out of them in Joe Barry. Minnesota's the team that interests me, and I'm going to see them again on Sunday. Everybody just talks about the Vikings like they're just this complete non-factor. They won 13 games last year. And I know they had like 11 games. They won by a score. Okay, but they won them. Like, they also have a good quarterback, and they have talent. Now, and by the way, defensively, they'll be better just because they have Brian Flores. I don't think that Minnesota's won 13 games again. But, like, could I see them being a 9 or a 10-win team in that conference? Yeah, absolutely.
And in that conference, that's probably a good seed, and I certainly think that's enough to win that division. So it's just that it's a weird thing to be looking over to the NFC as having one of the more like interesting parts to me, because usually we're spending most of our breath on the West and specifically the AFC. But I am kind of interested to see how that shakes out, and I find myself kind of liking Minnesota a little bit, and the vibes in Detroit have seemed great, so that makes a lot of sense.
Well, I will say, two quick notes. One on Detroit, one on the NFC in general. In Detroit, or in Allen Park, I guess I should say, the fans were giving them an ovation coming off the field at a training camp practice. They were chanting "Let's go Lions" at certain points of the day. I mean, you want to talk about a fan base that is juiced up.
Yeah.
They're into it. As far as the NFC, I'm actually in the middle of writing a feature, probably going to go up in about 3 weeks or so. On quarterbacks in the AFC, just how dominant the conference is at that position, and historically, where does it sit? In the NFC, the only projected starting quarterback who has ever made an All-Pro team, first or second, is Jalen Hurts. He did it last year, second-team All-Pro. That's only the third time since 1982 that a conference's projected quarterbacks, there's only ever been one All-Pro in the conference that has shot.
That's unbelievable.
You're talking about nobody at that position. I mean, it's just if you sat there and said, okay, if you think Hurts is the best, who's the second best quarterback in the NFC? Is it Dak? Is it Stafford? Is it Cousins?
Is it Geno Smith, who this time a year ago would have been a mile from that conversation?
I mean, you look at that conference. Is it Derek Carr? I would probably say out of respect for the man's career, it's Stafford.
Yeah.
But, I mean, man, you start looking at them. You go to the AFC, Russell Wilson's what? Like the 12th best quarterback?
Yeah, seriously.
It's insane.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, in the NFC, there's just nobody.
That is a bizarre. I think, and maybe I'm just not invested enough in the Dallas Cowboys' happiness to ever really be on the other side of it. But like Dak probably should be around there, like you said, like out of respect for the career. Maybe it's Stafford if his elbow works again. But man, that conference is a mess. Speaking of messes, and back to the AFC side, explain the Colts and Jonathan Taylor and Jim Irsay to me like I'm 5, because I think I might need a child's mind to fully comprehend what's going on here. What an absolute cluster bleep.
Well, if you were a 5-year-old, I wouldn't talk to you about Jim Irsay.
There'd be a lot of inappropriate material for that age group.
Look, I would say this. That situation was always a tinderbox because, like every other running back, seemingly in the NFL right now, he wants a new deal.
Yeah.
And they're not in a spot where they want to give one to him, at least that he wants. And then Irsay comes out and says, well, if we died tomorrow, nobody would miss us. Okay? It's just, look, there are certain times in life you just have to say nothing. Like, just say nothing. Just say nothing, tweet nothing. Like, just sit there. Jim Irsay just decided to get on Twitter and then to talk to the media, and that was it. So now you have this huge situation where there are loggerheads, and the problem for Taylor is, like, what leverage does he have? I mean, he's signed. Is he just going to, now he's on the PUP list right now. Like, once he's healthy, is he going to forfeit game checks? He's not going to do that, and nobody does that. So he's going to play. And, look, I spent a day in Indianapolis, which, by the way, they have a beautiful facility out in Westfield, Indiana, and a great PR team as well there. But, like, look, they're not going to be good this year, okay? I don't think I'm telling anybody news here. They're not going to be good. Now, I will say this. Richardson, if he is accurate, which has been his issue through high school and college, that kid's talent is out of this world.
I'd be thrilled if I was a
Watching
Colts
him
fan
throw
just
the
for him. That has to be exciting.
ball. Watching that kid, and everybody talks about the Arnold, his arm's huge. Watching him navigate the pocket and just do and I'm not comparing him to Mahomes, but when he'll do the side arm, he'll drop down, he'll do different. That kid, if he's accurate, he's going to be fantastic because the rest of it's all there. But yeah, if you're the Colts, what do you care when Jonathan Taylor shows up?
Yeah,
who cares? And you're not going to ship him out for a 6th-round pick. That's the other part of this. Any team that even teams that want Taylor, they're not going to. What are they going to give the Colts? They're going to give him nothing. Well, the Colts aren't going to take nothing. And then even if you got him, now you got to give him that big contract. How many teams are willing to do that? So I think it's just one of those things where, look, he's going to be on the PUP list. And eventually he's going to come off the list. And then he's going to play reluctantly. And then the Colts are probably going to say, Jonathan, that's great. Here's a franchise tag.
Yep.
I think that's where we're at with that position.
Yeah, I do too, and we understand how we got there. It just is unfortunate. There are guys whose names we know, whose jerseys you wear that are on the wrong end of it, which is tough because we all draft running backs in fantasy football or whatever. But we can save the rest of the running back conversation for another day. I will eventually come back around to some Chiefs stuff. But you wrote about a man who I have been fascinated by for a while now, who took a little longer than he should have to get his appropriate credit, I think, and who, much to my surprise, did not get a whole lot of mileage in the last head coaching hiring cycle. You can read Matt Verderam's profile, his look at Lou Anarumo on SI.com right now. Matt, walk me through what this guy has done that has... Look, the idea that anyone broke Patrick Mahomes or answered Patrick Mahomes was always ridiculous. But Lou Anarumo has caused Patrick Mahomes problems, and that is a very short list of people who can claim that.
Yeah. I spoke with DJ Reader. I spoke with a handful of members of the secondary, and I talked at length with Anarumo one-on-one for the piece over at SI. The thing about Anarumo that's really interesting, first of all, he went to school to be an educator, which comes through when he coaches. And when I talked to DJ Reader, I didn't even mention that. He said, one of the things about Lou that you love, he doesn't coach you, he teaches you. He explains why you're doing something. And he also talked about how he makes, in his opinion, the best halftime adjustments in the NFL. And I think one thing about Anarumo, though, that really, when you talk to him, talk to the players, just watch the Bengals, it sticks out. You get so many coaches in the league who they just want to do what they do, and that's it. And, hey, hope it works out. This is my scheme. With Anarumo, his scheme is whatever's going to work that day. And, what I mean is he's very, and this word gets used all the time, and he uses this word, multiple. They do a lot of different things, but he'll tell you, we don't really do that much different. He's like, it's a little change here and there. It's just enough to make you think. We need guys who are smart, but in the end, we just want guys to go out there and execute the defense that's called and play as a unit. And that sounds like a bunch of cliches, but more games in the NFL are lost than they are won. They really are. Guys make mistakes. Guys aren't in the spot they're supposed to be in. I think with Anarumo, a lot of it is, and he'll tell you, look, we know when we play the Mahomeses of the world, we're going to give up some points. We're going to give up yards. We're going to execute everything right, and we're still going to get beat sometimes. That's just the nature of the NFL today. But you want to make it as hard as possible. I think, you saw that when they just plastered Buffalo in the playoffs last year. Allen's a great quarterback, and in that game, he just had no idea what to do. Their offensive line had no idea how to pick up protections. Anarumo, some games won't blitz much. Some games he blitzes a ton. Honestly, in a lot of ways, he reminds me of Spagnuolo, where the Chiefs do that. There'll be some games the Chiefs are very passive in terms of bringing guys. There are other games it feels like the Chiefs are blitzing 27 guys every play.
Right.
I think there's a common thread there. But with Anarumo, he's a fascinating guy.
Does he want to be a head coach? Do you get that feeling?
I didn't ask him that straight away because it didn't fit the piece.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, he interviewed last year with Arizona. He might have dodged the bullet by not getting that job.
No kidding.
He does. And he's, I believe he's 56 years old. So he's a guy who's on the oldest side. The one thing that I think is unfair, not just for him, but other D coordinators around the league who are really good, they just thought that we can't hire a defensive coordinator because it's an offensive league.
Right.
I mean, so then hire a good offensive coordinator to go with them.
Right.
I mean, Andy Reid is an offensive-minded head coach. Well, he hired Spagnuolo, right? I mean, you know, you look at McDermott. McDermott's done very well in Buffalo. He's a defensive guy. Harbaugh in Baltimore is a special teams coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, to me, can you coach or are you not able to handle it? I mean, Tomlin, his background was on defense, so that stuff to me is always strange, and I think it is a real thing right now in the NFL. But yeah, I think Anarumo as a head coach, I'd love to see it. I think he'd be excellent.
Yeah, it just seems like even with the style and everything about, again, like the special education degree that led him to being a different type of coach now is, I think, fascinating and would be the type of guy that if I was a fan of a team that needed a coach, I'd be calling.
Guys just love him.
Yeah.
They love playing for him. And that to me as a coach is so much of the battle. Guys just believe in him. They believe in him because he explains why they should believe in him. And then they go out and they have success. You know, it's funny when you look at the Bengals. Statistically speaking, they have not been good defensively under Anarumo. Like if you look at red zone percentage, third down percentage, yards against, points against, they're almost bottom half of the league in every single one of them every year. And then they get into these games that matter, and they're tremendous. And I think a lot of it, again, and I do draw the comparison because I think it's really accurate in this sense, like with Spagnuolo, there are times where these teams like Cincinnati and Kansas City, they know they're going to the playoffs. They don't care if they hold you to 10 points. It doesn't matter. They're going to hold some stuff back, and they'll give up 20 points. They're going to win the game anyway. And then they get into the playoffs, and all of a sudden you start seeing all these calls you haven't seen all year long. And now it's like they're impenetrable. The reason is a lot of these coaches that know they have really good teams. I'm not saying that they'd ever purposely hold things back and lose some games. They always want to win, but teams like that do hold stuff back. And if they give up an extra 7 points and they win anyway, who cares?
Yeah,
they want to have that in their bag for January.
That's a really interesting point in terms of like those sort of aggregate stats that ultimately don't reflect that. Yeah, they're largely great when they need to be great. It sort of feels like that's been the Bengals story, and I never would have guessed that their bulk stats had them lower on the list than that. Matt Verderame of SI with us now here in the zone. Since we're talking about coaches and their styles and players who do and don't enjoy hearing from them, very interested to hear what your view has been on everything going on in Washington, from Ron Rivera's comments to, I think, I'll show you my hand, I think Eric Bieniemy's excellent response to that. We played the audio of that day here. But, you talk about former players that come out and tell you how much they love a coach. Bieniemy certainly has no shortage of that. And also, I'm not terribly surprised that there's a learning curve for getting used to who he is. What have you made of how that's all been handled in Washington?
Look, first of all, Ron Rivera ought to know better. Okay?
Yep.
Like, there's just no need to just throw your coach under the bus, which is what happened. Okay? Now, Rivera ends up coming out there and saying, I made a mistake. Come on. You've been a coach for how long?
Long time.
And I like Ron Rivera a lot. Yep. You got to do better than that. Secondly, if the players there are already complaining to the coach that Eric Bieniemy's a meanie sometimes, this is the NFL, guys. This isn't Pop Warner. This isn't JV in high school. This is the National Football League. And that guy just won 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
As one of the more important coaches on the team. I got to tell you, Patrick Mahomes has no problem with the way he coached them.
Right.
Travis Kelce doesn't have a problem. Tyreek Hill doesn't have a problem. I mean, who cares if some second stringer on Washington has a problem? Yeah. Not to sound callous about it, Eric Bieniemy's got a couple of rings on his finger. Like, what does Sam Howell want in the NFL? Are you kidding me?
Right.
Like, if I'm Ron Rivera and a player comes to me, look, man, I hear you, but you got to get over it. Yeah. This is about winning football games. And if you're Eric Bieniemy, you're looking at Washington. They're not exactly the Chiefs offensively. So you probably are screaming a lot. No, I think it's ridiculous. Get over it. This is football. And I don't subscribe to the theory of, these guys now, they can't be coached like that. Well, the Chiefs were able to be coached like that.
Exactly.
And the Chiefs were winning Super Bowls left and right. Maybe Washington should be coached like that a little bit more.
Look, if every former Chiefs player, if everyone former offensive Chiefs player left the team and then said, yes, Eric Bieniemy, man, he's miserable to be around, and so I'm like, that was not a lot of fun. Or, yeah, he's a screamer, and he doesn't, I don't know, man, he likes the sound of his own voice. We have one example of that, more or less, in LaShawn McCoy being hurt about the way that ended. Everything else has been in the direct contrary. Jamal Charles did not ever have to come out and stand up for Eric Bieniemy. Chris Jones, who's not currently in St. Joe, is posting about Eric Bieniemy on his Instagram. Like, Travis Kelce shoved this man on national television and seems to love him with all his heart. It seems silly to me.
That's the other part of this, too. I mean, not to get too deep into this conversation, but, like, you're pointing out, like, Kelce had, like, an altercation with him.
Yes.
And, look, I have news for everybody. The National Football League, these guys that are at the top of the sport that are fighting for Super Bowls, they're a little bit competitive.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think when they go into halftime, if things aren't going well, there aren't guys that need to be separated occasionally that are yelling and screaming in each other's faces? I mean, that's the NFL. That's the NBA. That's the NHL. These guys, I'll never forget my first big job, I'm going to call it the beat job. I covered the American Hockey League, which is like AAA for the NHL. Okay? And I'm in Binghamton, New York. And Luke Richardson is the head coach of the Binghamton Senators, and he was an NHL defenseman for 22 years. Now he's the head coach over in Chicago. And they lost the game in a playoff race. They ended up making the playoffs, but they lost this game to like the team that was in the bottom of their division. And I'm the only one covering the game. It's an away game. I'm standing outside the locker room, and Richardson walks out, and he came up to me and goes, you know what, Matt? It's really unfortunate we lost tonight. To some people tomorrow, they're going to get fired. And I'll never forget that. I was like 21 years old. And I was thinking to myself, like, I always look at it as a game because to me it's a game.
Mm-hmm.
People lose their jobs. People have to move. People's families get uprooted. Like, this is an intense thing.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Eric Bieniemy is not too worried about if some running back on Washington just can't handle the fact that he's upset with the way they broke the huddle.
Yep.
You know, I think sometimes we lose sight of that because it is a game, but it's life for these guys. It's, I don't want to say life and death, but
it's life.
It's about as serious as it gets.
Yeah.
It really is.
I think that's a fabulous point. I'll get you out of here on this then. Is there anything we ought to know for Chris Jones at this point? Anything that has struck you in the last week or two, or any new info that you think is interesting? And we got a preseason game coming up. I don't know if you're planning on where in the depth chart you think the Chiefs and Saints will be the most intriguing. But between Chris Jones and a game coming up, we actually have some adjacent Chiefs football.
We do. I would say this, and it's nothing new. I mean, this is obviously a situation that's kind of been in a holding pattern. To me, it still makes the most sense that they figure out its contract with each other. Yeah. Because if you're Chris Jones and you sat out and you lose $1 million, you're going to come back without a contract?
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous. You just cut $1 million check to what? Sit there for 3 weeks?
Yeah.
If you're his agents, if you're the Katz brothers, you're going to have your biggest client lose $1 million and then go out and risk it all for one more year. You don't know. I mean, hopefully he plays great and he's healthy. The National Football League guys get hurt. Yep. You're gonna be okay with your client losing $1 million, leaving God knows how much money on the table, and then by the way, like, hey, hopefully it works out this year. And if you're the Chiefs, what are you going to do? You're going to play this year out, and then next year, part of the Tyreek Hill trade was that you'd have all this cap space going forward.
Yep.
You're going to tag Chris Jones next year at $33.5 million, have no cap space, probably at that point have to tag and trade him, or just deal with a furious player all off season who's sitting there. That's not good for anybody.
No.
So to me, it still just makes the most sense that they eventually just figure this out, but eventually has gone on for quite a while at this point.
Yeah, it really has. It makes me a little bit nervous, but I'm hoping that eventually we get to talk to you about a new deal for Chris Jones and some real-life Chiefs football. Matt, enjoy the trip as it continues. Enjoy some football action that extends at least 1 degree beyond the Hall of Fame game, and we'll certainly chat again very, very soon.
I'll shoot you a text. I'll be in KC Monday, Tuesday, so I'll have to bother you at some point.
Fantastic. Yeah, you can buy me barbecue. Your choice. Where we go, as long as you're paying.
Well, the last time we went, we almost needed an ambulance.
Was.
We got about 6 pounds of food. We had to have BJ Kissel meet us to try to help us.
We were just handing, to-go boxes. Just, please help us carry these to the car. I actually think I still have some leftovers of those in my freezer somewhere, so I should have probably thought that out. Thanks, Matt. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, take care.
There's Matt Verderame. His tour comes to Kansas City. He will be signing autographs at a barbecue restaurant near you. Just find him and ask him nicely. I imagine he'll do it. I don't think he's going to, charge for it. I don't know. Maybe he should. $10 a pop? What would you pay for a authentic Matt Verderame auto?
2 ribs.
Deal. Done. I will sign for 1 burnt end per signature. I'll do a lot more for 1 burnt end. I don't want to go into any more details. It's The Zone here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. More Zone next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I always have a good time telling you about the good people at Greenlight Dispensary, and it's because I truly believe they're the absolute best of the best. They have the bud tenders there that can lead you whatever way you need to be led in your cannabis journey. Maybe you're starting from zero and saying, hey, this whole thing sounds pretty interesting. Maybe I could unwind a little easier or find some joy in all of this, but I don't know where to begin. Well, good news, because that's where I was when the medical legalization started in Missouri, of course now recreationally available, and I didn't know where to start. So I went to a Greenlight dispensary. It was real close to my house and said, hi, I'm new here. What's what? And they were incredibly helpful and have been incredibly helpful every single time. Being able to go to the underground the first Friday, Saturday of each month. It's like that even multiplied because you have all the people from Greenlight plus the people from the specific brands. But all the people in Greenlight, all the bud tenders are going to have your best interests in mind. You can say, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what my experience has been in the past. What would you suggest? And they're going to go ahead and give you those suggestions that I think are going to be invaluable because there's no reason to go flying blind here. You want to know what you got, and they can help you achieve whatever effects you're looking for. If you want to maybe get a little energy back, you want to relax a little better, you want to sleep better, they have Core Chews gummies that have each of those. Those are 3 different flavors that have each of those 3 different intended effects. All sorts of different stuff from flower to edibles to anything else. Just go check out greenlightdispensary.com. You can order online there, and then depending on which location, you can pick it up either from their grab-and-go window or through the drive-thru, which is incredibly easy and incredibly convenient if you know what you want online, or go in the building, ask the bud tenders what's right for you. That's all at Greenlight Dispensary and greenlightdispensary.com.
This
Thanks again to Matt Verderame of Sports Illustrated, SI.com, for joining us. A great piece on Lou Anarumo, like we talked about. You want to know the villains of your story, right? I mean, Batman is a good superhero, but he's a lot less interesting without the great suite of villains that he's gone up against over the years. Lou Anarumo is as good of a Joker or a Bane or whatever as Patrick Mahomes has found so far, and his background makes it all the more interesting, and I hope he gets a head coaching job in the NFC very, very soon. Thought it might happen last year. Wish it would have been the Cardinals for him last year. But get him out of the AFC and give the Chiefs a break from Big Lou, as excellent as he has been. Speaking of excellent, our training camp coverage is presented by Barstool Sportsbook at Hollywood Casino, the best place to get in on all the NFL action. Brought to you by Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. At Greengrass Cattle Company, order online at greengrasscattleco.com. And Premier Volvo Cars of Overland Park, or Premier Volvo Cars Overlandpark.com. That's Premier Volvo Cars Overlandpark.com. Appreciate all of them for being a part of our training camp coverage. We didn't get to as much of the forward-looking stuff with Verderame because I really think all of the national stuff he's come across so far in his training camp tour before he hits Minnesota and then down here to Kansas City. Just think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on around the rest of the league. But I will circle back again to what we're looking forward to on Sunday. We'll do more of this tomorrow, I'm sure, when Jason's back as well. But whatever we end up seeing from the first-team offense, I don't think we're going to get an honest-to-goodness look at that real unit, and if at all, certainly not very much. I think it will be, hey, let's get a drive with the ones with Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes and all of the receivers who are going to fit into the depth chart. I think we'll see them for a drive if it goes well, if it's another one like last year where it opened up with, what was it, the 12-play touchdown drive or something like that. If it is surgical, it is efficient, it is Patrick Mahomes looking like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce looking like Travis Kelce, spread the ball around, then I think we are going to see that, and then it's going to be Blaine Gabbert time, which will be different and kind of interesting. But we talked about this earlier this week too. The Chiefs have pretty frequently pulled Mahomes and left that offensive line in there. And I think that'll happen again on Sunday. I think we will see the first-team offensive line with Blaine Gabbert for a while. We might see them come out of the game with Gabbert, and then it's all Buechele and the backups, and then you can go down the depth chart. But I think it makes the most sense to give Blaine Gabbert, look, the injury you're terrified of is Patrick Mahomes getting rolled up on in the pocket or something, right? So you don't want to leave him out there unnecessarily, but make sure he's up to speed, and he'll probably scramble once, get tackled once, and then he'll be good to go. But Blaine Gabbert has not played behind this offensive line, and historically, from Matt Moore to Chad Henne, the Chiefs have needed their backup quarterback to be there in a big moment, fully confident in the offense and all of the surrounding parts around him. That, like, in huge moments, the Chiefs have needed that from Matt Moore and Chad Henne. So I think it makes a lot of sense to give Gabbert some time with the ones around him over the 3 games. It doesn't all have to come on Sunday. But also, this offensive line has not gotten a lot of live reps together. The interior should be a fortified castle wall. I mean, another year as a unit, and this is something that I just feel like every time I've gotten to ask an offensive lineman about this, it's something I talked to Laurent Duvernay-Tardif about a long time ago that just always kind of has stuck with me. A few things from that conversation, but the communication between that front line is so important because it's in part like just making sure you're reading the defense correctly, and then in part making sure you're all on the same page of what happens next. You're not just getting a bunch of one-on-one matchups, or I've got this guy who's in front of me, you've got this guy in front of you. Maybe I am taking this to an insultingly obvious level, but there is a lot of movement going on in the trenches that's frankly just hard to see from broadcast view a lot of the times. You're watching the ball, you're watching the quarterback. Even when you do look at the trenches, there's, you can't always see the numbers of the linemen that are who or where and what's happening on the far side of the field. There's just a lot of muck in there in the trenches. If you do go, oh yeah, I sometimes I'll see, a tackle on an island, but I'm not necessarily watching the trenches very often. If we do see the first team offensive line out there with more second team players around them, And maybe it's Gabbert and all the receivers except for Marquez Valdez-Scantling, because he's an NFL player who does not need fresh reps right now. I mean, getting him other than the up-to-speed stuff. But Rashee Rice and Sky Moore and Justin Ross and Richie James, it's his first year in Kansas City, even though he's been in the league for a little bit. All of those guys can all use all the reps they can get right now, within reason. And letting that group come together, even if it's Blaine Gabbert playing quarterback, I am really excited to see, because you're also, whatever the level of how other teams are setting up their starters, whoever's lining up across from you is going to be trying to do the best they absolutely can. It won't be as complex. There won't be as much movement. There won't be as many rotating parts and little, you're not going to get a whole lot of great disguised blitzes. But whoever it is that Donovan Smith is going up against is going to be an NFL player who is trying to make an impact in the preseason. And I want to see what that looks like when he also has Joe Thuney next to him and might get a little bit of help or get left on an island to see how it goes. I am just very, very excited to see both tackles, but I'm optimistic about Jawan Taylor, just flatly optimistic, and I'm cautiously optimistic about Donovan Smith. So seeing that unit all together, seeing those tackles, and then whoever it is they're blocking for, I do think we'll get a longer look at that line than we will just at Mahomes, the number ones, and then that whole unit going together. I'm hoping that line stays on the field a little bit longer on Sunday and gives us a closer look at one of the parts of this team that's hard to evaluate until you get into live reps. And we talked about a lot as it was uncertain, but since they've signed Donovan Smith and opened up training camp, we have not spent very much time talking about those tackles. The two brand new members of this team who are hugely unknown for two completely different reasons. It's exciting, but it's also kind of scary, and we'll get a little peek at that, and hopefully it'll take a little bit of the edge off when we see them take the field on Sunday. We'll take a break here in the zone. I'm Joshua Briscoe, and when we come back, there's probably going to be other Chiefs stuff, or maybe I'll find something online that distracts me for a little bit, like the Phil Mickelson thing did, and I don't know. Maybe I'll talk about comic books with Drake, or I don't know. Drake, you have any other fun hobbies you want to try to crack into next segment?
Too many.
We can talk about our newfound passion for baseball scoreboards that don't have room for a baseball to fly into them.
That sounds good.
Seems like a reasonable thing that certainly any stadium built within the last, 75 to 100 years would have. How old's Fenway?
It's old.
It's really old, right? Hold on, Drake. We can take a break after I Google. How old is... I've got 1900 something in my head. That feels like...
Built on a swamp. That's what the Finns are. It's Fenway. It's built on a swamp.
Really?
Yeah.
I had 1908 in my head for some reason. 1912. I'm good with that. I'm one presidential cycle off from something that's 111 years old. I can live with that. I've always hated the Red Sox. That's my most long-standing baseball emotion, has always been bleep the Red Sox. So I'm trying to come up with like a fun swamp joke, but most of them I feel like would not necessarily land.
Probably not.
Much like that baseball that ended up in the scoreboard and cost the Royals the game! With an asterisk, the game. It was still kind of annoying. We might talk about that. It might be something else next in the zone.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810W.
Talk about. It's really the only thing I want to talk about, and frankly, maybe something I should save for when Todd Lebo joins us next hour, because this directly affects him. You know, the Denver Broncos weren't very good last year.
They were not.
So what do you do? What do you do when you make a blockbuster trade for at one point seemed like a future Hall of Famer quarterback? Make a blockbuster trade for a well-known quarterback who has a house with a lot of bathrooms. You give him a whole bunch of money, and then you have a terrible season. Well, that contract's still guaranteed, so you fire the head coach. What do teams do when they have a head coach that behaves one way, doesn't have success? They fire him, and then they hire the opposite. You don't go from Todd Haley to Todd Haley. You go from Todd Haley to Romeo Crennel. You go from a dirty hat to he's got a little groin.
That worked so well for the Chiefs.
I don't mean to imply that it's a good strategy, but it does seem to be what teams do. Nathaniel Hackett seems like a totally pleasant fella. I thought his press conferences so far in New York after all the Sean Payton stuff, I thought he came off pretty well. Well, Sean Payton's the sheriff in town. And so the Denver Broncos will not be wearing bucket hats on the sideline of their preseason games.
Oh, that'll fix it.
James Palmer tweets out, what head coach Sean Payton doesn't want to see during the Broncos' first preseason game Friday after starters are pulled. 1, uniforms off after you're done playing. The phrasing is confusing. I think he does want you to take your uniform off after you're out of the game. I don't know why. Or maybe he wants you to stay in uniform. That one's ambiguous to me. He should really clarify. Number 2, no sunglasses. I believe they have an evening game tomorrow night. No Gilligan hats, which is what he calls bucket hats. Is that...
So this is in addition to the no bucket hats?
This is his no bucket hats rule. He's calling them Gilligan hats. I've never seen bucket hats called Gilligan hats. We can ask Lebo.
I just call them Lebo hats.
That's what I do too. And no interviews during the game, which I'm sure the TV running the preseason games are really going to appreciate. Because usually the in-game interviews with the starters start at the end of the first quarter, which kind of frustrates me at times because I actually do want to watch B.J. Thompson and Wanya Morris and Justin Ross and stuff. That's just my own personal preference. Upon further review here, the Broncos, not only do they play at 7 p.m. Pacific time, they play in Arizona, which is a dome. So whatever it is, I have some thoughts. Whatever it is that Sean Payton really doesn't want to see, no bucket hats, no sunglasses indoors during this night game. No, I think you fix it, Sean. I think this is it. I think your way of turning the Broncos around is to throw pot shots at Nathaniel Hackett and begin to spread the blame around and then ban bucket hats. I think Sean Payton's a good coach. I think that it was a very reasonable hire for them to make as they do try to figure out how to solve the problems that they themselves created. They made their bed, they laid in it, the bed collapsed, everything on top, the house around them collapsed, the clouds fell on top of them. I mean, it's been a bad scene over there. I get it. Try something different. But in all of the conversations we've had about Eric Bieniemy, the place where I, as a, sensitive little millennial, continue to differentiate Eric Bieniemy from your average high school football coach hothead, is that Eric Bieniemy, as far as I can tell, treats adults like adults. It's just really specific, loud coaching. I'm going to issue a dress code for what you can wear after you. And this isn't like wear your team gear. No Broncos brand bucket hats either.
And I think I've seen Bieniemy in a bucket hat.
I think I have too. I'm starting to think that he should get a head coaching job. I know no one has said that, maybe ever before. But I will go on the record and say I think Eric Bieniemy should be an NFL head coach. And I think Sean Payton is doing a lot of work and spending a lot of time on stuff that's not fixing the Broncos offense. You got to fix the culture, I understand. I just never watched the Broncos last year and thought, I know the problem here. Gilligan hats. Well, last year I didn't even know what Gilligan hats meant.
Does your knee pain keep getting worse? How about that pain in your shoulder or hip or back? Don't let them tell you steroids and surgery are the only option. Take my advice now and call QC Kinetics. This is Stephen St. John. QC Kinetics can make that pain go away with all...
value from Guaranteed Foods. I don't know if there's a better deal in radio than an hour with Todd Lebo.
It's free.
Talk about great value.
We give it away. It's just free.
It's just free. It's just
turn your radio on.
Boom.
Turn your Twitch on.
It's on your airwaves.
It's all out here for free.
It's on your airwaves. It's on your video streams, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. We're in all those places, people. Did you guys know that?
Threads?
I am personally. I did create a thread.
Threads?
I don't think that they have a live video format yet. And to be fair, I have not fired up Threads in a little bit. I'm not real excited about how Twitter has evolved, but I don't.
It is a place where what we do happens.
Right.
That's
the
still
thing.
The sports place.
And that. The tough part here is that I really want to, and everyone listening right now, you're getting free behind the music, behind the tweets for us, because
you mean posts.
I don't. I will never start saying posts for tweets. Donovan Smith was on Up and Adams with Kay Adams today, so he's filling up the off day of that. I'll have to check that out. Maybe we'll bring some audio of that tomorrow. Very interested to hear about him. Talked about him a bunch today. I feel like we have to be on Twitter because, like you said, it's what we do. That's where it happens.
That's where what we do happens.
It is the news breaking. It is the instant. There is no faster way. Every app that will shoot out push notifications say, hey, Chris Jones contract update. It's on Twitter first because that's where Schefter and Woj and the local reporters they all put it there first. My conflict is that I think everyone who doesn't have to be on Twitter should leave. Unless your job is staying plugged in that way is your priority because it is what you do, you should probably just say, all right, Twitter, it was a fun ride, but I'm going to do something else with my thumbs now. Mm-hmm. But if everyone who isn't working on Twitter leaves Twitter, then who are we tweeting for?
Exactly.
So I don't actually want them to go anywhere.
Text messages to each other.
Right, yeah. And so at that point, it's just a group chat, just one way for Adam Schefter. It's just
seems like there's too much going on. There's too many choices now.
There's a lot of choices. There's a lot going on, and none of them are terribly attractive. Threads has like the user base that has made it make some sense, but I'm
just used to Twitter and how it works, and like I have an Instagram account, and I get on Instagram for things, and there are some of these breaking news type things there, but I don't like. When I look at Instagram, it doesn't seem like you really know if something's brand new or fresh.
No, absolutely. It's all an algorithm.
Could be 4 days old. I want my stuff in order as it happens. And that's that's me. Now, maybe other people don't like that. Listen, I look at TikTok, but that's not for what we do.
No, that's not for work.
I laugh at it.
Yes.
It's funny, and, there's all kinds of, time wasters there. But I don't waste my time on Twitter as much as I look for news and things there.
But Twitter hates that because every app now has the vertical video that is now, if you click on a video, we were talking about this yesterday with intern Reed, who is, I think, 19. And so he's a youngin', and he's also annoyed by this. So it makes me feel better is I turn into Tim Allen and the Santa Claus. I can see my beard turning white in the video feed. But he's like, I don't want to click. I click a GIF of Bartolo Colon, and then I swipe up to try to close it, and now I'm watching an Instagram reel that's actually a TikTok. That's actually like we are so many layers deep that everyone wants that vertical video swipe factor because it gets in your brain. You just
want it
swiping.
all to go back to Vines, don't you?
I loved Vine. 6 seconds at a time. That's all the attention span I have still.
Yeah.
Whenever I get a TikTok or an Instagram reel that's like 55 seconds.
Better get funny 7 seconds in.
It better get good.
You better get me some funny
quickly. This had better have feature length film depth to it because you've got 7 seconds to sell me on it.
That's it. That's all you have.
That's all I've got.
I don't know.
And also sometimes restrictions around the time it created more comedy opportunities.
Yeah.
You've only got 6 seconds to make this joke land.
To be funny.
You got to be really good at it.
It created some monsters though, didn't it?
Oh yeah. I think there's some.
Isn't that where the Paul brothers?
The Paul brothers basically started there. If my memory is correct, it was a difficult time to remember things. But I think the Paul brothers came from there. created some monsters is probably the right phrase. I think Bo Burnham essentially broke there, who's done like much bigger, more interesting artistic projects since then.
I tried to get through one of those and I couldn't.
You didn't like Bo Burnham? Did you?
That long, whatever the thing was.
Inside was the one in the pandemic. That didn't do it for you.
I mean, my daughter said, "Watch this," and I tried. I was like,
all right,
give me 6 seconds of this. I don't need the whole thing.
An hour is a lot of vibes.
It was a lot of stuff on that. I'm trying though to get through all of it. You got to. I'm a typical like. Here's the deal. I got the Facebook to find out if anyone died or if anyone had a kid. And next week it's going to be all my friends. Hey, you're going to school. Here's your first day pick. Right? It's going to be all that. And it's going. That's what that's for.
Yeah.
And then my Twitter is to learn things about work, and the Instagram and TikTok are to bide my time while I'm doing nothing else and just look.
I think
and
that's
laugh.
right.
That's fine for me.
That's okay.
But I don't need all of these. I don't Snapchat.
Yeah, I almost completely. I still have Snapchat on my phone, but now there are just like a couple people who I communicate with almost only on Snapchat.
I don't communicate there. I get told sometimes. My wife said, "Did you see that thing?" You know what I really hate? Here's what I hate.
Let's do it, Andy Rooney.
Okay, here. You know what really gets me mad? So like Facebook had Facebook, right? And then there would be a messenger inside of Facebook.
Yes.
And now it's a separate app, but they still own it. I don't get it. And then my wife will say, "Did you see that thing I sent you?" I said, "No. What was it on?" Messenger. I said, "Well, no, I don't see those.
Okay.
I don't look at that." And then I click on it, and then it may say, "No, please log into this." I'm like, "Well, that's not helping me." When it was just inside Facebook, and I could, oh look, someone sent me a message. I'll look at it. It's this whole dumb other app,
Messenger app.
Seems to be they just justified the fact that some people worked there, and they said, "Well, let's make another app." It's like when they used to have 75,000 different car models at GM or something. Do we really need a Pontiac and an Oldsmobile and a Chevy that are all the exact same car with different nameplates?
Probably not.
No. Oh, let's make a Saturn too, and they're all the same. And I'm like, no, we don't need all of that. Let's just have this all here to justify, these guys are working for Pontiac. Well, what do you mean they're Pontiac? What about Oldsmobile? Well, that's the same car, but we're just doing a different thing with it.
I am in what I imagine is the quite small minority where I have essentially banished Facebook. You can see my very organized home screen. A lot of subfolders, big subfolder guy. Want everything on one screen if I can get it there. I have basically banished Facebook off into the corner, one of my little social folders, because I will click it if I am posting something or the occasional. For me, it's more of who's getting married, who's announcing a pregnancy.
It's a good way to tell me if it's someone's birthday, because I don't remember birthdays. So I will click on that. Every day I'll look at it and I'll go, oh, yeah, it's so-and-so's birthday today. And then sometimes if I remember, I'll go, oh, well, I should wish them a happy birthday. And if they're a real friend, I won't do it on there. I'll text them.
Right, that makes sense.
But if there's someone else, I'll maybe say happy birthday. But then a lot of times I forget. It's probably someone's birthday today.
Oh, it's always somebody's birthday.
Always someone's, but sometimes I'll look up and go, oh, my God, there's 13 people's birthdays today? What is this about?
And
what was going on 9 months ago before this?
I've just kind of accepted that I'm never going to remember people's birthdays, and that if I only remember from Facebook anyway, some of them are going to get passed by. I hope, as a blanket statement, hope everyone has a magical birthday. Hey, someone right now is listening to this show.
Happy birthday to you.
And it's your birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thanks for spending some of it with us.
Exactly.
If we were Facebook friends, I wouldn't post on your wall, but I'll tell you on the radio, happy birthday. I use Facebook Messenger for all sorts of stuff. Because it is a cross-platform app that will let me, send photos to my friends with Androids, and I put friends in air quotes because, come on.
Yeah.
I don't actually feel that strongly. It just felt like a funny joke, and I know that Kent Swanson, who we had on earlier, he's an Android guy, and so texting him is hard, and his phone always burps a little bit.
I have 2 Android children.
Oh, really? What about your human children?
No, they're androids.
Oh, wow.
That's what I get. Our little family. When my wife tries to send a funny video on the family thing, it's a little grainy thing. It just makes the kids mad.
Here's some. I just remember that this
Same
happened
thing with
last
our
night.
producer thing. That St. John ruined it with his Android.
He did. And here's the thing. I don't actually blame Steven.
No, it's not his fault.
I don't even blame Android. iOS, Apple has
it's Apple's fault.
The best setup for texting universally with iMessage. iMessage is great. You can, and which is a lot of it's similar to how Facebook works, but it's all in your texting app, so it just works. iMessage is wonderful, but they know that we, with the iPhones, are going to turn on our Android friends or children and bully them into trying to get Apple products. I don't actually. My favorite Apple product is my AirPods. My AirPods, I would walk over broken glass for, and I'm sure there are Android equivalents that work just as well. But I don't actually want to create Apple converts. That doesn't really do anything for me. But I do want to be able to just exchange a 4-second long video that has more than 15 pixels.
Yeah.
Last night,
That's all you want. It's not a big ask.
It's not a big ask. Last night, thing I just remembered that I should have opened the show with. Last night I was watching the Royals game, and my brother who lives in, I know, I'm not humble brag, but I did spend some of my time last night with the Kansas City Royals, just hitting baseballs into places they've never been hit before.
Ever.
Making
history
in a 111-year-old stadium or whatever we just figured out it was. But he's in Florida where the rest of my immediate family is, and he sends me a video that, of course, he has an Android, so I just see mostly black screen and virtually nothing else. Strange lights in the sky. He sends me the video in higher quality elsewhere, and because we had to have a 10-minute workaround for me to get a video from him because it's 1997.
Was it possible lightning? What did we have?
I'm gonna have to mute his commentary.
Oh,
obviously. And Lebo, I don't know what it was. I'm not.
Think they got UFOs?
Here's the
Are
other
there
people
UFOs
there
in
saw
Florida?
it. Other people saw it. I'm gonna show you the still photo here first because the video will make a little more sense when you see how everything actually moves. Mm-hmm. But there's this like line of lights.
Yeah,
these individual like little flecks of light are all moving independently of each other. Mm-hmm. I'm not fully team UFOs have landed here and the government's hiding it. It's flying, and this one never appeared to land. It just sort of disappeared. I'm going to
in the atmosphere.
It's out here somewhere. The way it moves at the very, very beginning, it takes a second to kind of see it. But I don't know what it is. You guys have any alien stories? You ever have a suspicious unidentified flying object sighting or anything?
I mean, it looks like a possible drone show.
It looks. That's what I said.
But that's pretty far away. Those are big drones.
They'd be really. The look on Lebo's face right now is, that's weirder than I thought it was going to be.
Your uncle got something.
My brother.
Your brother got something.
He can be my uncle for now. It's fine too. I'm going to tell him that I talked about this on the radio and now have extended his alien search. I'm hoping that this becomes just his passion now, and that I can say I have a brother who's really into like UFO chasing. Get him on.
But it would have been great if
History
he had an
Network
iPhone
or whatever. That's the thing, though. It
would have been better.
The video quality is not quite as good, and it was way harder for me to see it.
Yeah.
What do you think about all this UFO stuff?
Oh, there's stuff out there for sure. Now, have they landed and been hidden by the government? Probably not, but possible.
But stuff out there advanced enough to fly and check us out.
Absolutely.
You know, some inner space.
I mean, we're barely walking and we're sending stuff out.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, if
we can do that,
we've got human beings have a lot of weak points if you think about it.
We can't even get our videos between two phones together. And we've gotten stuff up into space.
Pretty deep into space, too. I saw they found a star or a galaxy or something like in the shape of a question mark somewhere out there.
Mm-hmm. It's called
It's the galaxy. Drake, do you think they're aliens? I want to know.
He knows. He's been tracking them on his computer back there with his SETI thing.
You got a NORAD.
Like Travis Kelce's dad for decades. But you did it.
I did, yeah. I helped out the SETI thing.
What is the SETI thing?
Oh, boy, you don't even know.
No, this is all I want to know.
The search for extraterrestrial intelligence, they record...
SETI, search extraterrestrial intelligence.
They have, the big observatories, the big radio observatories are constantly looking for signals from space.
Yeah.
And there's more data than they can compute on their own, can comb through. So years ago, they put out a screensaver where you would download just a tiny little bit of data, and when your computer wasn't in use, it would comb through, 1 second recorded from one place in the sky at one particular frequency.
That's why the Drake's been hacked and lost all his credit card.
This is also how you mine Bitcoin, essentially, I think.
Kind of. But so I did that for a long, long time, and then they had another version where you would fold proteins, your computer would fold proteins looking for cures for things, and.
But I remember that's his screensaver back there. And it was up. It was this weird looking kind of like 3D graph. And then when Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce had their dad on the podcast, he had been doing that too.
Yeah. That was the same.
That was the exact same.
Okay, I remember them talking about that.
You are like Travis Kelce's dad.
I thought it was
in a way.
Was it 2-3 weeks ago? There was testimony in front of Congress from people who are like,
Yes.
oh yeah, there's stuff, and I'll tell you about it, and
Can't do it in this setting, right?
Private session, can't do it here, but absolutely. And the American public was like, okay.
We got like Tom Brady said, we got a lot of bleep going on, man. I don't have time for aliens right now.
I thought the nonchalant reaction from the populace of the U.S. was the most interesting
If they're
part.
coming here, I can't stop them, so I'm just going to live my life, you know?
I think that's probably the way to do it. The only little extra sort of apocalyptic thing I keep in mind is how much insulin do I have, you know?
Yeah.
Because
maybe they're bringing the insulin.
That would be great.
They came for you, Mr. Briscoe.
Come take my pancreas. Probe my pancreas. My mom and sister have said now that there is a satellite train from Starlink.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That is what people have claimed
that is.
That is.
Okay.
I'm not so sure, but I appreciate
I know
your feedback.
this. I mean, I remember we went out a few years ago. The International Space Station, goes around, and I've seen that when we've gone out a clear night just with your eyeballs. You don't need anything.
I like space
special.
stuff. I'm way more interested in space stuff than ocean stuff at this point. I don't know why. I don't know. Does everyone just want to be an astronaut and then we never fully leave that behind?
Did you watch this thing on Netflix called The Deepest Breath?
No, but I don't think I'm going to like it.
Deep. There's apparently a competition where you can see if you can hold your breath and swim down as far as you can. And it's honestly deadly is what it is. And it was enough to give you anxiety watching these people dive down because you have nothing. You have no scuba tanks. You have nothing. I think I would rather get shot into space than down to the bottom of the water.
That was my thought when the whole Titanic submarine thing was going on too. Is like I just don't the deep sea stuff. So like again, my little sister is starting to study like marine life and all of that.
They took her to Florida where it all is.
Exactly.
You
So
don't
she's
think
been
about
surrounded
those
by
things
it.
here.
Just catching lizards and fish and all sorts of crazy nonsense all the time. Marine life and all of that is very interesting to me. There's a certain depth. I think it's below where my feet go. When I can have my head above water, feet on ground.
You get 8 feet down, you're done?
I think 8 feet is probably about... I feel like 8 feet, I could sink and then push back up, swim. I'm okay there, but that's about as far as I really want to get into deep water.
Yeah, I think, I think at scout camp, we had to go down to like 10 feet and pick something off the bottom or something.
I'll do that in a pool.
At a pool.
I'll do that in a pool. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't need... I've snorkeled, but we didn't go deep when I snorkeled. I was a kid when I snorkeled. I don't need to scuba dive. I don't think. I'm fine. I'm good up here.
There was something. Renee was looking at some
on
scuba
the
diving
water
thing. Yeah, that's it. I do too.
It's fine.
I like to be
I
a
don't
little
really
bit.
like to be on the water too much because there's no shade on the water.
You need your bucket hat.
You need to be in the right boat.
Certainly can't have a beach vacation with Sean Payton.
No. Maybe on vacation you can do whatever you want.
I bet
Just
not.
when you're out of the game, you will dress accordingly.
Can you please, on behalf? And now look, this game in Arizona is in a dome stadium at 7 p.m. Pacific time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the UV rays are going to be the problem here that Sean Payton might be concerned about. But could you please, on behalf of the Bald Broncos, at the very least, can you please speak to Sean Payton, at least issue a statement as to the medical necessity
It is a medical
of a
necessity.
bucket hat?
If the Chiefs were playing, their last preseason game is at home at noon, right? On a Sunday or a Saturday.
I think
Their
the
only
last one's
preseason-
not on a Sunday, but
It's a Saturday, I think, but it's at noon. They don't have any night games in the preseason this year. If you're telling me I'm on the visiting side over there, baking in the sun, Sean Payton, and I can't put a bucket hat on if I'm not in the game, I'm sorry, man. What's his problem with bucket hats?
I don't know. I
get
know.
no sunglasses or whatever. You mean to look cool. All those sunglasses can help with the UV rays too, and your eyeballs and all that stuff.
It feels like a power grab situation. Sort of, I'm in charge. It's new here. Is Chiefs Cardinals not at 7:00? I have that down at 7:00.
Well, that's on the road. No, I think their home game is what I'm talking about.
I'm sorry. I understand. Okay,
They're-
yes. Chiefs
they're playing-
at Cardinals is at night, but the home game is the noon kickoff against the Browns.
Yeah, it's noon. Well, it's going to be hot and sunny.
Yes.
Especially if you're on the visiting sideline over there. You're going to be in the sun the entire time. If I'm playing for the Browns and Kevin Stefanski said you can't put a bucket hat on, I'd say I'm hurt. Send me back to the training room.
Yeah, I'll go
I
watch
can't
from
stand
inside
out there.
then.
I wear a bucket hat in the tent watching Chiefs practice. Actually, I don't wear it in the tent usually, but when if it's sunny and I get to walk down the little 30 feet down there, I shoot the videos up here for our training camp things, and I take the hat off for those, and I jumped from the shade to the sun, and one take. Yes. I never make a mistake. I shot a couple of videos the other day with Paige, and I'm like, I think I got sunburned. I was out there for a minute and a half. It's a safety thing for your son. I go to the dermatologist every year, and I get stuff burned off me. I'm not going to have Sean Payton tell me I can't do something. This sounds to me like a Gunther Cunningham first-year coach thing.
That's what that is what it comes off as to me, because the full list of stuff is not a whole lot better. Because it's in the James Palmer's tweet says, here's what he doesn't want to see. I don't know which way this first rule is ruling, which is uniforms off after you're done playing. I don't know if that means take it off after you're done playing or don't take it off after you're done playing.
I think it says he doesn't want to see uniforms off. So I think he maybe not.
That one is confusing. But sunglasses, bucket hats,
it would probably make more sense to have the uniform off. That way they couldn't say go in the game.
I guess so. But if you went the other way and you said, I'm a first-year head coach, I want to see everybody keeping their uniforms on all game because we're all a part of this team. Yeah. And your brothers are out there, fourth-string brothers are out there playing their hearts out. You're going to keep your shoulder pads on because we're all a team. Yeah. I could see that, too. It feels, that's what I said last segment, is that it feels a little bit like, you always have those tonal shifts in head coaching hires. Yeah. It's never Todd Haley to Todd Haley. It's always Todd Haley to Romeo Crennel. This feels a little bit like a first-year coach trying to assert his dominance kind of thing.
Yeah, it seems silly to me. And he's an accomplished coach. Now, but if he's trying to do everything different than the disaster that was there last year, was Nathaniel Hackett allowing bucket hats because he's bald?
Maybe that's what we need to go back and we need to review the tape of the Broncos preseason last year.
Too many bucket hats.
And maybe there's 85 guys on the sideline, bucket hats, sunglasses, just shirtless, just fully nude actually, except for the bucket hats and sunglasses. They just stripped the entire uniforms off.
Could be.
No, they lost because Russell Wilson was terrible.
Here's a question. I don't know if we've talked about this. I posed this question.
Okay.
All right, so put yourself in 2013.
Okay.
And Andy Reid got hired by the Chiefs. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And put yourself in 2023, and Sean Payton got hired by the Broncos. Which one of those guys was more accomplished and should have the fan base more fired up?
I don't want to just make it all about rings, but Sean Payton has a Super Bowl that Andy Reid did not have. Did they...
I think their winning percentages were very similar.
Yeah, and
Sean Payton had been kicked out of the league for a year.
That's true. That's a good point. He had a year-long suspension that I don't remember Andy Reid ever getting.
Yeah, but he had. I mean, Andy had obviously been to like 5 NFC Championship games. Which was more than
he had
Sean
more
Payton
total postseason success, but not the Lombardi.
But I think they're winning. I mean, like their win percentages were pretty similar in the postseason, and that's why, like, I think a lot of these things Sean Payton is doing is, this stuff's a joke,
right?
And I think him putting his foot in his mouth about what had happened there before. You didn't hear Andy Reid sit and talk about how, and because let me tell you something, what was happening in 2012 was a way bigger disaster than what was happening in Denver last year. Okay?
Absolutely.
So he went about it a different way, and I think Sean Payton has now apologized and said he shouldn't have said those things, whatever. But he said them in front of an actual media member.
Yes.
That's something a first-year coach would do.
It is.
Like he doesn't know what's going on.
That's right.
This dude had been around forever, and he's got a reporter in his office. It's on the record, okay? Yeah. But I do think there should be cause for Broncos fans to be very excited about the fact that they've got a legitimate head coach who comes with a resume. I think we get a little bit, it's not clouded, but our opinions are colored by the fact that the Chiefs have won 2 Super Bowls and gone to 3. But when Andy Reid came in, the people in Philly were like, we're done with this guy.
Yeah, they fired him in Philly.
Yeah, because, I mean, they won 4 or 5 games the last year. They had some tragic things happen there as well.
Yeah.
And all kinds of stuff. And it was time for him to just – and Andy loved his time there. And he has said, hey, listen, sometimes you've done your job there.
It's just time.
It's time to go somewhere else. But Sean Payton – it's kind of what happened in New Orleans, although he was still getting paid, right? He had signed the contract. And he couldn't go anywhere else because there was compensation
right,
from
they had
the
to trade for him, yeah.
That whole thing was weird down there. He won a Super Bowl, okay? So, the family, the Benson family, loved him up.
Right.
They stuck with him through a year-long suspension from the National Football League that was embarrassing for that franchise. And they had some devastating playoff losses.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Marcus Mariota threw and caught a pass, and Andrew Luck picked the fumble up and ran it in.
Sure
but the Stephon Diggs play
that
knocked the Saints out of the playoffs, and I don't like to say the best, worst, whatever, one of the worst non-calls in the history of sport.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
You know, they would have been in the Super Bowl playing maybe the Chiefs, but the Chiefs lost the Patriots a few hours after that game. You know, so he's had some of that stuff. But I think the Broncos fans should be super excited about this. But a couple little missteps have been like, ugh.
It's a couple little missteps, and I think it is also damaged by Russell Wilson being there, frankly, because Andy Reid gets to town, and it's Andy Reid and Alex Smith, and it's it's a total. You are completely rebuilding.
Well, you know, that is also colored by the fact that Russell Wilson had a bad year last year.
Right.
But Russell Wilson...
If they would have traded for Russell Wilson this offseason...
You'd be like, well, that guy's gone to 2 Super Bowls. He's way more accomplished than Alex Smith was, or
Absolutely.
whatever. But I think they are kind of similar-ish situations.
Yeah,
and the Broncos fans should be excited about it. And, you know, the hard part is when Andy Reid had come to the Chiefs, that was the same year that Peyton Manning went to the Broncos.
Yes,
so
I think that's right.
It was like, wow. Well, now the Chiefs are that right now because the Broncos those first few years dominated the division. They won 13, 14, 15, right? Won the Super Bowl, went to 3, right? No, went to 2.
Went to 2.
Lost 1, won 1.
Yeah.
Also had an embarrassingly awful playoff loss at home when an unbelievable Joe Flacco pass landed in someone's lap over people's heads.
The best of times.
Yeah.
Truly, I mean, a great Joe Flacco playoff moment.
Yeah, well, his moment. That's why.
An elite moment.
Yeah, he won a Super Bowl, so good for him. But, you know, they should be excited out there. But this stuff that he's doing, it feels like Todd Haley when he came in. Or, you know, Josh McDaniels. Each time he came in somewhere.
Feels a lot like a Josh McDaniels thing.
It's just like crazy. It's you know, so I'm excited for the season. I'm excited for this division still because I do think he adds something to the division.
Yeah,
you know, that's
absolutely.
legitimate.
Yeah,
and I do think the Chargers are still the Chargers, and they're going to be better. I think the Raiders are going to be probably awful, but I mean, it's going to be an excited division. I mean, it's going to be great. I mean, the NFL season, we're still a month away.
Still a month.
A month away from the first game.
Yeah, that's true.
But we've only got a few practices left up in St. Joseph, and we're kind of rolling along here. So it's go time. But I mean, you cannot fast forward this fast enough for me to get to the real games. And you know, it's been a week since we had the damn Hall of Fame game, and then nothing.
Nothing.
We're going to finally get a few games this weekend, so it'll be all right.
You want to talk about what those games might entail? Some things. You've been at training camp a lot. You are a wealth of observations now that we can dig into
when we
here.
get to watch. So.
You know, it's a little bit hit or miss. We'll talk to Lebo about some things he's seen in St. Joe when allowed to do so, plus what we're going to be looking forward to on Sunday against the Saints. We'll talk about that next.
You're in the zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
It's The Zone here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Todd Lebo with us, usually on Tuesdays, but, you've been in St. Joe, a lot of practice. An off day for the Chiefs today.
Off day today.
So a day off the road for you.
Not driving up there. And in all last week when Stephen was up there at the Stony Creek Inn, was an off week for me, which I enjoyed not driving. Although I enjoy covering the practices. I wish I could teleport there.
Teleportation is the singular superpower that I think about most often that I would like to have, I think.
Just blink your eyes and, here I am. I'm in the tent.
Right.
I'm at the Bloom Union.
You could use it in such a variety of ways. Both your commute is now zero. You could live wherever you want, because you could commute from wherever, and you don't have to worry about drive time. Yeah. Plus, you can take have a little weekend in Europe. You can come back and sleep in your own bed if you want.
Just like that.
If I could just install little warp points even in just a couple of spots, like
beam me to St. Joe, Scotty.
Beam me to St. Joe, beam me to the office, beam me to my room, and then beam me to my parents' place in Florida. There we go.
There you go.
Then I'm gonna come hang out on the beach for a little while.
Get to pick 4 spots.
Get back tonight.
I do St. Joe for the month of July and August, so I could just beam up there.
That would be really nice.
Yeah, but so it's been good. They'll have a practice tomorrow too, and that's when we'll get a chance to talk to Andy about plans for this weekend, which he'll tell us. We'll do what we kind of always do.
Which he'll say. I think each quarterback gets a quarter, which is never how it actually goes, but it's what he'll say.
Patrick Mahomes will play a drive likely, but that's still a lot more. Aaron Rodgers. I looked this up the other day. I don't think he's thrown a pass since 2017, maybe.
Wow.
In the preseason
Crazy.
Or something like that. And, he's not alone. There are a lot of guys that's the way they do it. But here's what we know about Andy Reid. He's got a way that he does things, and that's what he does.
Yep.
And maybe he's changed some things, because I think he has changed some things, because the rules of the league say that you have to change some things, right? I mean, they're not having tackling to the ground and all this stuff, like 2-a-days or any of those things back then. But he has worked his system out the way he works it. When he got the schedule and he knows they're playing on a Thursday and then a Sunday and then a Monday night and whatever, he will get everything planned out and he will be ready to go with that. And he's got his preseason, now that they play 3 games instead of 4 games, that he had to obviously alter the way he does it. Right. But he still does. I mean, Patrick Mahomes plays in all these games, so until, the final one when they were playing 4. But he gets those guys out there. Now, there's not a lot, but it's something. He sees a value in that. And I don't know, in a copycat league, many things he does get copied.
Yeah.
But that one doesn't really get copied.
No, I mean, the rest of the league has very much been trending the other direction. I think it's interesting that I typically, would prioritize player health and not trying to get Patrick Mahomes' ankle rolled up on because he's trying to scramble in a preseason game. But it makes sense to me that there is a middle ground between training camp and regular season football games. It kind of makes sense to me that you want Brian Cook to get to lay somebody out before the game actually matters.
Yeah, that's what Spags said the other day, was like his big message to the guys Saturday night when they're in the meeting is, you're going to tackle. We'll watch you tackle.
Yep.
And it's what I asked Keandre Coburn yesterday. He's like, when's the last time you tackled someone?
That's a great question.
I was like, his game, I guess. But now they thump, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And they do have whatever form that you're kind of tackling. But if you do that against Derrick Henry,
yes,
it takes more than just the thump.
He will thump you in that interaction.
So it ain't tackling till it's tackling. And that's what we're going to get to see on Sunday. And I am excited to see that part, because we just really don't see – I don't know if these rookies can tackle.
Yeah.
And we want to watch that. And like, Brian Cook, I think, played well in the little spots that he got to play last year. I want to watch it. I'd like to watch him play a half.
Yeah.
And the defensive guys, he will probably play more than most, because they want him out there getting reps and all that stuff. And they're going to, so you'll see some of these guys. We all watch the quarterback. Right. And he's going to play a certain amount, but they also don't want Patrick Mahomes out there playing with a secondary line.
Well, and
because the other team, and that's what I was listening this morning to Garrett and Anthony when they were on. They were talking about special teams. They love to watch special teams during this, especially the punt part, because the kickoffs are going to be really weird this year.
Yeah.
But the punt return and the punt coverage, they're all outing that. There's no patty caking down the sideline, because there'll be some plays here where a veteran wide receiver and a veteran cornerback know this is a run play the other way. They'll be a little da. You don't on the lines. You're really playing football,
right.
But there could be some pass, situations where the guy doesn't really come at you. Those dudes on the punt teams are all trying to make the team. So it is it's a 50-yard fist fight down the side to watch those guys. So that's the part that's for real football that you want to see. If you're one of these roster freaks who wants to know who number 48, 49, 50, 51, 52 are going to be, watch those because that's where those fights are going to happen.
And we were talking about in years past that first team O-line has actually stayed in for the backup quarterback for at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And for Blaine Gabbert, it will be his first time behind that line with in some form of live action. And I want to see that in part because the backup quarterbacks for Patrick Mahomes always have a big moment they got to come up and play in.
They played.
It's just happened. For Matt Moore and Chad Henne both, that's a real part of how the Chiefs have had success in the playoffs. It's crazy, but it's true. But also, this offensive line, I would like to see play together against an opponent who's not just the Chiefs' front defensive line. Yeah, because you have two new tackles, an interior that should be gelling as a Cerberus at this point.
Yeah.
It is three heads, but one entity because they've played together long enough now. But those tackles have something to learn about their communication with Tooney and Trey Smith and how that unit operates all together. And Blaine Gabbert hasn't thrown a pass to a Chiefs player about being covered by a non-Chiefs player yet in his NFL career.
Yeah, there's certainly good things to watch there, to pay attention to that. And you always just hope for everyone gets through clean. You don't want to see injuries in a preseason game. But listen, you can get hurt in a practice.
Right.
You can get hurt in just a warm-up drill. These things happen. Now, there's probably a better chance to get hurt in a game, but it's not zero chance to not get hurt walking down the hill.
Right.
These guys put themselves in harm's way during practice, during the games, whatever, to go out there and play. So you hope you don't get something devastating for sure in one of these games because it happens. I mean, every year there'll be something that happens somewhere in the league like, oh boy, that one stunk. So you got hurt, but we've already had.
Kadarius Toney got hurt before the first practice officially started.
Catching a punt.
Yeah.
Jalen Ramsey is out for months.
Yep.
And that wasn't a game. So these things can happen just about anywhere. But that's what you're hoping to see. That you'll get to see that. But listen, I like to watch the end of these things. And at the end, here's the deal. There's some dudes playing in the fourth quarter are going to score a touchdown in a Chiefs uniform, and that's going to be their NFL career.
Yep.
So good for them, and their families get to watch it. There was a funny moment this morning with Sherm and Dieter, and they were talking about when there used to be 4 games, and Sherman's like, yeah, the fourth game we would just be over there, and Dieter said, don't point at me when you say we.
We.
He said, I wish there was 5 preseason games. That was his chance to make the team.
Right.
He was out there. He's out there grinding in that fourth quarter to go out there and try to make the team because that's your chance to go. And this team is so deep right now.
Yes.
The roster is so deep that there are not lots of spots available, but those spots are available in that third and fourth quarter and on those special teams when they're going down there because, we still don't know. I mean, and it's going to be really weird this year. This is the first year of the not cutting the roster down like 3 times.
Oh, I forgot about that.
They can cut anyone they want any day. Okay?
And a lot of times if there's a veteran that might catch on somewhere else, they'll do him a favor and cut him early.
Right, cut him early. They've done that many times.
Yeah.
But it was a rule last year. You had to cut at this date, and you had to cut some more at this date. There's one roster cut down now, and that's after the final games.
Yeah,
so they're 85, 90 guys. I think they'll cut them before some, but they're not going to cut them all before the last game.
No, you need somebody to play those games.
So they may not cut a lot of them unless it's maybe a favor for someone to, hey, listen, you can go maybe get a job somewhere else. But it's going to be really weird, when they cut everybody at once, basically.
And, man, the movement in the NFL that day will be wild. And they're keeping the expanded practice squad. So there's
there'll be
more than just a 52-man roster.
Quarterback thing and, all those things that they're changing. And I think the expanded practice squad has been fantastic.
I do too.
I think that was an accidental thing that came from COVID.
Yep.
And I think it's perfect because it really does give you flexibility when injuries happen to not just bring someone in off the streets. You've got someone who's been around your stuff, get you a chance to hide some guys, develop some guys. And you know what? It's more jobs. And listen, they're not $700,000 a year jobs, but they're good jobs. The practice squad is a high-paying job by any standard in America. It's a good job. And that is good stuff for those guys. And if you get to have a couple of weeks on the active roster during a year, it's even a better job.
So that job gets some perks.
Those checks are even better, so it's important for them. And they got practice, man. And there's 17 games now. People are getting hurt. It's a longer season. They got the Thursdays and the Mondays and the Sundays. For a team like the Chiefs, they will use that practice squad a lot. So they love having those extra guys around.
A lot of them are names that we know. That's where Cornell Powell stuck around last year, and you give guys like that an extra chance, an extra year or two to develop. I think there's something to that. We'll maybe pick a couple more guys we want to look forward to on Sunday, or we'll talk about aliens or something else with Todd Lebo next in the Zone.
You're in the Zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Hey, shout out to Google Fiber. Usually Jason is the one that gets to talk about how great Google Fiber is, and it really annoys me because I want to talk about how great Google Fiber is. I have Google Fiber now. I have for a little while. You know that thing he says about how like their award-winning customer support so good you won't even need it. That's true. When we moved into the house, there was a Google Fiber like port thing, and when they moved out, they took some part of it they weren't supposed to. It was not quite right. So I poked around like, I don't know what's wrong here. So I called Google Fiber. It's like, hey, I ordered my little kit, but something's not quite right in the little wall mount. What should I do? And they're like, we can come by soon. I was like, okay, soon would be great. I would love soon. Couple days, like 4:30. Yeah, what day now? 4:30 today. Couple hours. You know what, Google Fiber?
Come on by.
Come on by. I'll make sure the front door is open for you. They fixed it in 10 minutes, and I've had great internet at home ever since.
Did they laugh at you for not being able to fix it yourself?
No, it wasn't my fault. There was
good.
the previous owner, I think, like unplugged something that wasn't supposed to go with it, and so I ran into an issue like that, which made me immediately like, oh, because they just like sent me the little start yourself kit,
thing,
which is awesome. I am an appreciator and user of Google Fiber, and they help bring you the zone every day. So appreciate them. Is there anybody we haven't talked about yet that you have either seen something from in camp that makes you excited to see them in a live game? We haven't talked about Deneric Prince much today. He'll get some work, I'm sure.
He'll get plenty of work, and I do want to. I want to see the tackles. I mean, I think that we haven't seen them out there against other folks. I want to see. It seems like we kind of go up and down on whoever's you're most excited about or whatever. Justin Ross, let's see him in a game. He hasn't played in a football game in forever.
In a long time.
So let's see that. And I don't care if Patrick Mahomes is throwing the ball or Blaine Gabbert or Shane Buechele or Chris Oladukin.
Is that how it's pronounced?
That's how I say it.
Okay, I've been saying Oladukin, but there are a whole lot of ways you could pronounce it.
There are a lot of ways you can pronounce it. But I want to see Justin Ross catch the ball. Listen, I think Sky Moore is going to be much better this year, but I'm not sure we're going to glean that in these games. I think Richie James is someone we should be excited about, but I definitely want to watch Justin Ross. And I want to see Rashee Rice, too, because, I didn't watch a lot of SMU football.
Yeah,
okay?
They weren't on as often as I thought.
They're on all the time. You just weren't watching.
Yeah.
But we saw all the highlights and stuff like that, but I want to see him out there in an NFL game. So I'm excited about all of that part. On the defensive side, listen, I'm a little mixed message on what Felix is at this point right now. I think he should get lots of reps because, the starters aren't going to play as much, and I don't think he's a starter right now, so they want to watch him play. Let's see how he does, see if we get some of those flashes that you hope you see from him. And I really like their young defensive backs, and I'm not talking about the second-year guys. Those are old guys.
Right, those
I'm
are the
talking
old
about,
men.
Dude, Spags likes these rookies they have, too.
I know.
He likes them. They are out there and making plays. So there's a lot to look for in this game. And I like the fact that it's on a Sunday afternoon and not on a Thursday night.
A noon kickoff. We can practice that for the exactly one time it happens this season.
Early.
Is that right? I think week 2 is noon kickoff, but Christmas.
Noon Christmas, but that's not a Sunday. That's a Monday.
There you go. Okay, I couldn't remember what the dates were. By the time we got to a commercial break, I had forgotten that I ever was questioning it.
Yeah, they have the Jacksonville game is the noon game on a Sunday.
You get one more this Sunday. And then also some preseason action on Saturday night, right, Drake?
Right here.
You ready for, Saturday afternoon. Because,
You told us who it was, now you can't remember.
Sports Radio 810 WHB, your home for the NFL.
Cowboys
Jags
Jags
on Saturday. Football's so close. Oh, we're almost there. Thank you, Levo.
Yep, anytime.
Enjoy your drive up to St. Joe tomorrow.
Gonna love it.
And don't let Sean Payton take that hat off your head.
No way.
Jason's back tomorrow. We'll talk to you at 10. Till then, bye, Mom.
Family Leisure is finally having our summer sale. Lots of cold and rain.